If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out Pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to What a Cartoon, where we thank you for the sour persimmons. I'm your host, slop artist Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and I will attempt to entertain you in my inimitable fashion.
And who do we have on the line?
This is Thad Komorowski, and this may come as a complete surprise to you, but this is an animated cartoon.
And today's cartoons are the Daffy Duck classic cartoons, The Great Piggy Bank Robbery, and Duck Amuck.
I love that man!
Okay, I wanted to get the Fibber McGee and Molly reference out of the way. I know you people love that show, but it's referenced twice in this first cartoon we'll be doing today. But finally, we're going back in time to the 40s and 50s, our oldest cartoons to date on this program, to talk about Looney Tunes. It's been brewing in the background for a long time, but now we have a request from a patron.
Yes, premium patron Nick, one of our top $50 patrons. If one of those opens up, you can help choose an episode too. And Nick wanted to pick a number of classic Daffy shorts. We pared him down to these two on his list, and I think these are two of the best, I think, of all time.
They represent both sides of the Daffy coin, I believe. Yeah. But our special guest today is Thad Komorowski. I had him on this podcast because he is a classic cartoon expert. One of his jobs is restoring classic cartoons and working on re-releases. And you might have heard him previously on our Ren and Stimpy episode released just after John Kricfalusi got Me Too'd.
Yes.
But I want to, on the record, we didn't like him on that podcast before he got Me Too'd, and now he's a complete disgrace to everyone. And that's out of the way, just so everyone knows.
Anyway, welcome, Thad.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, these are the Rolls Royce of Warner Cartoondom, definitely. You started off with the best.
Oh, yeah.
So there's only more, there's only further disappointment from here.
Well, I do want to say, with Thad, Thad is someone I'm always thinking about when I podcast, because if it's a classic cartoon history thing, I'm like, oh my God, I hope I got this right, because I know Thad might be listening. He is a patron. I'm just happy I did not anger you with my DuckTales and Charles Barks and Uncle Scrooge stuff.
That was perfect.
I was delighted that you complimented me on that, so thank you. As someone who works on Donald Duck Comics, of course, you do localizations of Donald Duck Comics, is that correct?
Yes, I do. Usually from the Italian books or the Dutch books or the Danish books or the Brazilian books. We used to do them in the monthly IDW titles. We don't do those anymore, but we are doing them through the Disney Masters series from Fantagraphics. And the next one, The Duck Avenger Strikes Again, should be out in, I believe, a couple of weeks. That's by the cartoonist Romano Scarpa. He was actually an animator, very influenced by the Disney style and Freddie Moore in his early work. And he sort of became the Italian surrogate father for Mickey Mouse primarily, but he did do Duck Comics. And we've got the one I localized with my friend and mentor and editor David Gerstein was one that was too hot for the monthly books. We were planning to do it. It involves Mickey's Minabird pal Ellsworth. He's it, and as we'll talk about, Daffy influenced the whole wise ass bird thing. But so this was basically their Daffy from the strip.
Interesting.
And he's in the Foreign Legion, so you can put two and two together why that one wouldn't fly in a modern publication.
I think I see where that's going, yeah.
But in the defense, it's the point of it is how he adopted his child. So,
Well, this will be coming out shortly after this recording, so our listeners can check out your newer comics in comic book shops. I do notice
it's not
them
so
now.
new. It's from 1975, but
it's new to us because we haven't seen
new.
it.
I haven't seen it. It's new to me.
America is in the dark on so much duck history. Like for me, I consider myself a comic book expert, but I didn't read Bark's stuff until 10 years ago, maybe, was when I finally started reading.
Oh, yeah. I didn't get into it until even later. Probably not until my late teens. I'm a little younger than you guys, but I didn't get into that.
But today we're talking about much ruder ducks.
Yeah.
Daffy Duck, number one. You're right, Thad. All birds are wise asses. I have one. He's a total smart mouth bastard, but I love him. But I did want to talk about our experience with Looney Tunes. And Henry and I believe, are maybe 10 years older than you, Thad. So our experience is pretty much shared, in which there were basically like 3 syndication packages that we watched over and over again. One was on ABC Saturday mornings.
The worst.
Terrible. I don't like those. One was on Nickelodeon and one was on TNT. And they all had different cartoons. Now, I watched these over and over and over again, and I love them. And I internalized so much about these cartoons, where I was going through this reel of Daffy Duck cartoons on YouTube, and it was basically, here's 20 seconds from every Daffy Duck cartoon. And it would just have the clip on top with the title on the bottom, nothing else. And as I was going through these, I was like, I wonder if I can guess the director based on the footage provided. I got everyone right until I stopped doing it. I couldn't believe how much I knew just based on drawings and movements and backgrounds. Like, that's Bob Clampett, that's Frank Tashlin, that's Robert McKimson, that's Chuck Jones. Like, all of this stuff is in my brain because of that childhood indoctrination.
Yeah. I slightly less than Bob, but it's similar for me too. That I think we talked a little bit about this with David Silverman on our interview, but after Roger Rabbit came out, it really was this renewed celebration in the mainstream of classic cartoons. And they were not that they weren't rerun to shit in the 80s, but there was a little more prestige to them by the early 90s. And so, I recall, I would watch Looney Tunes whenever I possibly could, all those reruns, and it was a huge deal for Nickelodeon. They made it a huge deal when they got the Looney Tunes reruns. Like they had this contest that kept me glued all day to it, which if Sylvester runs across the screen, call in to win a bunch of stuff.
This was Doug T-shirt winner Henry Gilbert calling.
Well, unfortunately, we couldn't win, and they actually had to end it because it was tying up phone lines too much during the Desert Storm when people couldn't call their soldiers.
Oh, jeez.
It was wild. But that's how huge Looney Tunes was in my youth. And yeah, I watched the Nick ones, I watched the TNT ones, and I was also further indoctrinated, not just with VHSs of all of the out of copyright cartoons just shoved out for like 99 cents on a tape at Pick and Try and Save, but also the Chuck Jones compilation movies, and to a lesser extent the Freeling movies. Those really got me into Looney Tunes as well. I was always and the Tiny Toons celebrated all those cartoons so much in them that it made me a diehard as well. So I was heavily influenced to be into all those Looney Tunes.
I did want to ask Thad about his experience because, number one, he's our guest, but number two, the love of Looney Tunes is very generational, where the original audience for people that are Henry and I's age were our grandparents or even great-grandparents. And then our boomer parents grew up watching all of the reruns on TV. And because of that, they love Looney Tunes. And then when we were born, they were like, yes, we love Looney Tunes. You watch them as well. But I think, Thad, you probably got in just as the door was closing for Looney Tunes awareness. I want to know how you got on board the Looney Tunes train.
Well, they were on a lot. Like you said, I saw them on Nickelodeon. I saw them on the Turner networks, and I saw the hacked up ones on ABC, and I knew they were hacked up on ABC right away because I would obsessively buy the VHS tapes, which even then, even aimed at kids, they said 5 uncut, fully animated cartoons right on the box, and it's like, well, this is gone. Just if it's not a racial joke or something more explicitly violent, it's always they're just so stupid, the edits. Like, you can't put a character's head into a boiling pot of water or something like that.
Anything imitatable, I guess.
Yeah,
Potentially
yeah.
imitatable.
But yeah, well, first, it's kind of weird. I always say the people that influenced most of my humor and taste as a kid were Jim Henson and Chuck Jones, because up until maybe age 6 or 7, I was obsessed with anything Henson related. Even when I was past the age, 7's kind of past the age for Sesame Street, I still love those characters.
Mhm.
And I think what made them timeless, as well as the Looney Tunes, is anarchy. And, these are real people with real issues and real egos and problems and relations with people. That's why I always say Sesame Street is more timeless than the actual Muppets, because that's just flat out character based. It's not based on some old vaudeville variety show format.
Or parodies.
It's why. No matter I'm going on a tangent, but no matter how hard they try and they get the right people doing it, Muppets always just shit the bed. It's just I kind of like the ABC show, but nobody fucking watched it. No one cared. And I was in Times Square when they were advertising that thing everywhere. And it's like no one watched this.
Well, though the Muppets also, similar to Looney Tunes, had a love of vaudeville. And,
yes, they did. Yes, they did. Of course.
That's why I love about Henson too. Like that makes it so specific. Hearing these ancient ass songs that would never be played anywhere. Like I think that's what Disney doesn't get with their Muppets, that they aren't singing songs from like 1890. Like, that's their mistake.
Exactly. They weren't singing the most recent pop hits.
And Looney Tunes also has a lot in common with vaudeville, where it's like 40% of the jokes are stolen from radio shows that basically started with vaudeville
Most
performers.
Of the dialogue, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. The secret origins of these characters, like Kenny Delmar wanted like those guys murdered for Foghorn Leghorn. And what's funny is another character that originated from radio was Sylvester the Cat. It was a character Mel Blanc did on the Judy Canova show, Sylvester the Postman. So they took the name.
Wow.
He had the same voice and the same thuffer and thuckatash.
I had no idea about
that's
that.
That's why they didn't just drop out of the sky. They ripped that off from a character Mel was doing. So, and then of course no one remembers it. But Fibber, McGee and Molly and Red Skelton, probably at least with Clampett, like 90% of the dialogue is cribbed from it.
Yeah, and I believe there's a later cartoon where it is just the Jack Benny show, but with mice, and I think that was even before the TV show.
Yeah.
That was on Nickelodeon. Only later through like Mystery Science Theater references that I realized like, oh, that's a Jack Benny reference. These are all Jack Benny things.
Or the multiple Abbott and Costellos.
Like,
so many. Or Babbitt and whatever the other one was called.
Babbitt. Babbitt and Catstello.
Catstello, of course.
How clever.
So let's get into the history of Daffy Duck. So in case you are a Zoomer or Gen Z, I got to point out, we should have pointed this out earlier, but you may know Looney Tunes from Big Chungus.
Yes.
The star of Looney Tunes is Big Chungus, otherwise known as Bugs Bunny. But just a super, super brief explanation as to what Looney Tunes is. Looney Tunes is a brand of cartoons that ran from 1930 to 1969 as theatrical shorts. And they initially started as a way to promote records and sheet music of songs acquired by Warner Brothers. Shortly before they started this Looney Tunes / Merry Melodies program of content, they acquired a ton of music. So this was a promotional tool to sell music. They would put the music in these cartoons.
That's why Powerhouse appeared in like 80 cartoons.
I've got to be honest, as a connoisseur of the older films in general, live action, like you got to give props to Freeling, because his arrangements with I forget who. Oh my god, I feel terrible. I forget who the musician was before.
I don't know either. I was going to say Carlos Stallings. All I know.
There were a couple, but their arrangements of those songs are much better. I'm not kidding. They're way better.
Well, that's why a lot of the early Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes were a group of characters will put on a show and sing 5 songs, and that's it.
those were the ones that frustrated me in the reruns. The oldest.
Yeah.
I mean, also as a kid, when you can feel how musty and old they feel, like you know to like them less, and you can tell you don't have the. That's why they had all the fucking Roman numerals on those things instead of the numbers.
Yeah.
But I could tell something was a 50s cartoon versus a 30s cartoon. It was pretty easy to tell.
And in case you're wondering, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, it's sort of a parody on the name Silly Symphonies, which were Disney's first cartoons. Now,
always
Thad,
in the shadow of Disney.
Yes, but they were better. These shorts are better. But Thad, I want to know, because it was hard for me to discern this, the difference between a Looney Tune and a Merry Melody. I was reading that Looney Tunes were the black and white cartoons for a while, but after a while, there was no distinction between a Looney Tune and a Merry Melody. Do you have any idea of like what the difference is?
That was it. Someone asked Frizz that, and he said there was no fucking difference. One was black and white, and then one was color.
I prefer Looney Tunes because no one ever calls them, oh, the Merry Melodies are on. Let's watch those.
They did. They syndicated them as the Merry Melodies to differentiate it from the Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon.
It didn't stick.
That's lame. No, I mean, Merry Melodies, it just seems too cutesy, which for, the violent, explosive energy of Looney Tunes, like, Looney is better. Like, these are Looney Toonies. That's fun. And also like Toon, Toon just became the nomenclature for them anyway. So it works double. You get Tunes and Toon in there.
It's funny because two of their main characters, their names are based on outdated words for crazy, like Bugs. I think it's like Bughouse Crazy is the term.
Yes.
And then Daffy. Daffy obviously is Daffy, crazy.
I think we need to cancel these guys now. I think it's a little.
These are ableist slurs in their name.
No.
Oh, well.
I don't want to, that verged on PC, anti-PC humor. I'm not into that.
Yeah, we don't mean that. I call people idiots even though it's rooted in ableism.
Yes,
it's okay.
Lame is the hardest word for me to get rid of because I do just like saying lame, but I
guess you're just a big lame.
I guess I'm just a big lame.
I guess so. Yeah, like you said, they started primarily to promote the music library. Leon Schlesinger had just gotten Hugh Harmon and Rudy Ising, two of Disney's top people. So they did their own thing. They did Bosco, the Talking Kid. And they had their differences with Leon, and they parted way for MGM. And Schlesinger was making shorts for a couple of years. Now everyone likes to shit on Frizz, but he was not responsible for Buddy. Let me say. He was not. He only did like 3 cartoons, 3 of the better ones actually, but he was mostly the Merry Melodies big budget guy.
I assume that Animaniacs had made Buddy up as a parody of those kinds of characters.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I was like, oh, there are real Buddy cartoons. Oh, my God.
They ran them on Nickelodeon in the before they switched over to full color and when they computer colorized the old Porkies. They ran the Boscos and the Buddies all the time.
As a kid, that was the first time I was mad at colorization when they colorized Wacky Land. I was like, this is wrong. I knew it then, but only because Tiny Toons indoctrinated me like, oh, I know Wacky Land from Tiny Toons, and it should be black and white. This is wrong to colorize it.
Before colorization technology, Thad, weren't they just like traced in Korea? Like they just were traced frame by frame.
Ew.
Yes, Fred Ladd is responsible for that, and he has a special place in hell for what he did to those. And he did those with Popeye, too, under Ted Turner's orders.
Yeah, boo.
And the thing is, Turner could have did the computer colorized for the Popeyes. He was cheap because he wanted to get it at half the price.
Oh, jeez.
See, I don't like colorization, but I don't hate the computer colorization because that at least preserved the artwork. Like, the timing and the animation and the backgrounds. You didn't have brown Daffy Duck or purple cats. They bastardized those pretty heavily, but the cartoons weren't as bad. They're bad when you look at what they did later, but when you look at them in context of the animation as a whole, the early 30s Warners, they're just a step down from Disney and Fleischer, but they're still a lot better than the competition. Then Tex Avery comes along from Walter Lance's Universal Studio. He had been directing a couple of stuff, and he was sort of inserting more of the overt sarcasm, smartassery into a couple of Oswalds. If you look up one called Chris Columbus Jr., it basically is a late 30s Avery short with like Egghead or something. He started directing right away, and he pulled in two guys who were kind of miserable there. As his top animators, Bob Clampett and Chuck Jones. And they were working in the shitty building, Termite Terrace, they nicknamed it. It was just this shithole shack right off the lot of the main studio. They were making mostly black and white Porky Pigs at that point, because Porky was their first real star. He had a big character role, and I Haven't Got a Hat, as the stuttering fat kid. And voiced by Joe Doherty, a real stutterer. So if you listen to the ones voiced before Mel Blanc came along, that he isn't putting that on. That's him talking.
I found it really tragic that he was let go and Mel Blanc replaced him because his stutter was too out of control to act as Porky. That's that's really tragic.
That's sad.
We wanted stuttering, but not this much, dude. But I want to talk about the debut. So, Thad, you talked about Tex Avery and how Porky was the big star at the time. We all think of Bugs as, Bugs is Mr. Looney Tunes. Porky's now like a C-list character for certain reasons now. But Porky was the star of the show. But in a 1937 cartoon called Porky's Duck Hunt, directed by Tex Avery, Daffy Duck made his debut. Not under the name Daffy Duck. I believe in the model sheets or whatever, he's called That Darn Fool Duck. Yeah. But he's not named that in the cartoon.
Yeah, so this was sort of the height of the Avery Clampett collaboration. Clampett's deal with Tex was like, he kind of like a junior assistant to him. He had a little more power than the other animators, but he was given the scene with Daffy, and they hadn't really figured out what was going to happen. They knew he was going to, say, hey, that's not in the script. He brings the dog back unconscious instead of the dog bringing the duck back. And Bob asks Tex, it's like, well, how can I make him exit any way I want? And it's like, yeah, go for it. And that he comes up with this crazy shit, which is all ripped off from older stuff, even kind of. There's an old time comedian, Ben Turpin. The cross-eyed stuff comes from him. Like you just Google him right now, you'll know who he is right away. The skipping is actually ripped off from Stan Laurel and one of their first Laurel and Hardy shorts put together, called Putting Pants on Philip. He does that. He does it, and Bob admitted it. He's like, yeah, I just took it from there. And as Bob Mackey knows, I kind of put David Silverman on the spot once when he was praising Laurel and Hardy, and he said, hey, I was restoring this old short Hog Wild. This pose of Oliver Hardy pointing at his ass kind of looks exactly like Homer saying, the bee bit my bottom, now my bottom big. Did you reference that? He's like, probably. I wasn't trying to put him on the spot as something I noticed.
He loves Laurel and Hardy. I think the finger twiddling that Homer does is from those shorts.
Oh, yeah. The finger twiddling. It's Oliver Hardy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's as that Itchy and Scratchy lawsuit proved, all cartoons are ripped off from something else.
Roger Myers Jr. was right.
Yes. Yeah.
So Daffy debuted in Porky's Duck Hunt. That was the first cartoon where Mel Blanc voiced Porky. And as we talked about before, Porky was the first major Looney Tunes star, and Bugs wouldn't really take over until the 40s. But I believe, Thad, correct me if I'm wrong, this cartoon was made with Egghead, and that is when Daffy had his real debut?
Daffy Duck and Egghead was the second one.
Yeah, and that's when Daffy sings the song about himself, right?
Yeah, he sings the new Looney Tunes.
The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down?
Merry-Go-Round Broke Down. He sung the new Looney Tunes theme. Yeah. He sung that. That was like one of the few times Tex incorporated a song. That was sort of the breakthrough with Tex. He started to do Merry Melodies without incorporating a song into it. Like up until he started directing Merry Melodies, they always incorporated one of the Warner Library songs. His first one, Uncle Tom's Bungalow, unfortunately, that was the first one without any stop and sing along type of shit.
All the Uncle Tom's Cabin jokes those always confused the shit out of me as a kid. Like it seemed like even into the 60s, like on Rocky and Bullwinkle, they do those jokes of just like everybody remembers Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Uncle Tom's Cabin was the Harry Potter of like the last 100 years, basically, before Harry Potter.
Yeah, remember when they ran on the ice floats? Remember? Well, that song bit too, that reminds me of when I'd watch old Marx Brothers movies. I'd be like, that's time to wait for this song to end already.
Well, by that point, they were more entertaining than just stopping. They would do actual jokes or screw up the lyrics a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daffy took off. Yeah, because like no one had ever done that overtly crazy shit right in the middle of like a relatively normal picture. I mean, like it's the watershed moment really for the Warner cartoons. Daffy, because finally all of this stuff is coming together. You've got Mel Blanc doing the voices, which really pushed the writers and directors like, oh, we got someone who's not just doing a silly voice. This guy can actually act. So this all of a sudden they start coming up with these characters that actually catch on. And you've got Carl Stalling doing the music. You've got Treg Brown doing the iconic sound effects and mixing. And you've got Tex directing. Frank Tashlin started directing shortly after him. And Frizz is finally like, well, all right, so we don't have to do this fake Disney shit anymore. We can maybe funny. And in Frizz I'm a huge Freeling defender. But he always had a bit of an edge to his stuff. Like even the Merry Melodies, they've got a little smart assery, like, like I know this is gross what I'm doing type of thing. But he wasn't the trendsetter, but he'd follow through like fucking dynamite. Like right away, like his Merry Melodies after Tex started doing with the blue ribbon cutting off the credits. Sometimes you might mistake a Freeling for an Avery at that point. So because Avery hadn't really taken off doing the crazy stuff yet. But yeah, Daffy then he started. It's funny. If you look at the list of Daffys, there aren't that many Daffy Duck cartoons.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I assume there were much more, but often
There's
he would. Yeah,
that's why we're skipping years ahead of great stuff, but that's why they did those horrific shorts with Speedy Gonzalez, because they didn't have many Daffy cartoons after they sold to AAP United Artists. They didn't have many Daffy cartoons in the library, so they needed that. And for the foreign market, because the Hispanic Latino community loves Speedy, so like, hey, let's put these two together and just grind shit out,
I do want to jump back to the tragic years of Daffy.
Non-tragic years.
Yeah. We'll mention the DePatie Freeling cartoons that even I knew were bad as a kid, but so it's important to note, and we'll see this in this episode of What a Cartoon especially, that every director had a different stamp on Daffy. He was a very malleable character up until he was sort of figured out in the 50s. And my way of overthinking this entirely is that Daffy was wacky, super wacky, when the country needed a wacky character. So like he was created in the Great Depression, not ours, which is worse, but the one back then, which had no social safety net. That was what made it a little bit worse.
Yeah.
But he existed as a wacky character up until like through World War II. And then in the post-war boom, he became the character that was like cynical of the capitalist nature of Hollywood. So just
exactly. Yeah. He's still insane, but his insanity is redirected.
The button downness of Hollywood is making him go crazy. Like it's making him more self-hated too. Like he really hates himself a lot more. Wacky Daffy of the 30s and 40s, like, I do like that. I like hateful Daffy more, but the wackiness is fun. I guess, I liked the wackiness less from him because I'd seen his, the successors to him who basically stole craziness from him and acting crazy.
Yeah, Mr. Screwy Squirrel.
Screwball Squirrel's one of my all-time favorites. And
I love Screwy Squirrel, but it's just like that was...
it's Daffy.
That was Tex's attempt to do a star that just shit the bed. I mean, everyone likes to say, no, he's just doing it ironically. He's like, no, he really was trying to make that a reoccurring character. So... But yeah, I like Daffy when he's a little calmer. Like, I love the 40s Daffy. Like, I know the guys doing the new Looney Tunes things it's like doing the brain dead Daffy going crazy everywhere, but it kind of gets a little old. And by Great Piggy Bank Robbery, he actually is more calmer. It's just it's such an insane environment and state of mind.
Yeah, he's not like always jumping around saying "woohoo" in the Great Piggy Bank Robbery.
Exactly,
I like this slightly more mellow one, but not quite the cynical, resentful one. And one of my favorite cartoons with Daffy in it, and I'm sorry I forget the name. I'm sure Thad will know it immediately. Is I love the ones where he is just messing with someone just by being extremely antisocial. And there is one where he is adopted as the pet duck for a little girl, and the father is just furious with him all
Nasty
the time.
Quacks.
Yes,
Nasty Quacks by Mr. Frank Tashlin. Yes, I always say though he did a trio of Daffys. He did Porky Pig's feet, but he did 3 with Daffy on his own: Plain Daffy, Nasty Quacks, and Stupid Cupid. And I always say like he was destined to direct Jerry Lewis because it's basically just a younger, angrier Jerry Lewis in those cartoons. But Daffy's just this little sex-crazed maniac in those stories.
And he's like coming home drunk and waking everybody up. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God, I forgot that one. Yeah, no, of that era of Daffy, I did like the ones where he tortured Porky, like where he as his roommate on the business. That was such like an old
Daffy Duck slept here. Yeah. That's the one. He comes in drunk with the invisible kangaroo. Yeah.
And there's a Porky wetting the bed joke because Daffy Duck spills his water on Porky's crotch.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I had to. I had to ask. I think that was the cartoon where I had to ask my mom, like, what does "How Dry I Am" mean? What's that song? Those were the Daffys pre-50s that I really like because he needs a foil to drive crazy, but Elmer never felt like to me the right guy for him to drive crazy. I like it better with Bugs.
Porky and Daffy is perfect. You know, it's funny. Fudd, I love Elmer Fudd, but it's like he's such a fucking loser, and it's like he's the one who goes out, by himself, to shoot off fireworks for the 4th of July.
In like a parking lot somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's what Billy West told me, like, who is the only person after Arthur Q. Bryan who can do that voice. Even Mel Blanc couldn't have done it, but that's what he said. He's like, oh yeah, I grew up with those types, those alcoholics with guns stepping out of the woods going, That's how you do it.
Sounds terrifying.
Yes.
But I want to talk about the stages of Daffy. So he went from wacky Daffy to sort of toned down Daffy. And then before he was the Bugs rival, he was paired with Porky Pig in a lot of like parodies of popular genres and popular media, in which he would play basically like a hapless character that would be injured a lot. And Porky would sort of be like the know-it-all, like just raising an eyebrow as Daffy did something stupid character, like the Robin Hood one, right?
Oh, I mean, Robin Hood Daffy. That's another of my all-time favorites.
Deduce you say the Sherlock Holmes one.
Yes. Elementary, my dear Watson. That's a fucking. That's one of my favorite outro lines ever in Looney Tunes.
Yes. And it did sort of make Daffy into a sort of egocentric character or egomaniac character.
The joke's more on him eventually. Yeah. Why of the Daffy being the good guy and not failing ones, I remember the one of him torturing that not Porky Pigman director. It's like
Daffy Duck in Hollywood. Yep, that was one of the first. Yep.
But that also confused me as a kid.
This isn't a gangster picture.
Okay, now it's all coming together in my head.
That one confused me as a kid with all of the 30s I didn't know any of these movie stars. Same with the one they did, like their Roger Rabbit before Roger Rabbit one of them going into the real world and demanding better pay or whatever that
you
was.
ought to be in pictures. Yeah, that
this
is
just a game now of saying and describing something and you say it. I love it.
No, but that was the other watershed moment, and that is down to Frizz because he gave Daffy this backstabbing edge. Like he's like, I'm going to trick Porky into quitting, and I'm going to take his place. It's great.
I'm going to give more credit to Frizz then. I am a Frizz hater, but this is now I'm being nicer.
I was going to ask that. I wanted to credit to Chuck Jones, but when did the Daffy as Porky as Chuck Jones said as the greedy little miser? Like, when did that come along? Where now, like, for the past 70 years, his identity has been the person who is upset with Bugs for being more popular, often tries to kill him because of that. And it's fun in like a meta commentary. It's very sophisticated for a cartoon from the 50s, where it's like this one cartoon star is jealous of the other cartoon star because in real life he is more popular now. I think it's because Henry and I have agreed to disagree about Chuck Jones, of course. But we went to a screening of Chuck Jones cartoons a few years ago, and I was like, you know what? I love Chuck Jones. He's fine.
Right.
He just lived the longest, so he got to write the narrative.
Yeah.
And he got to define the characters for much longer than the other directors and artists.
Well, he got all the celebrity friends, too, so...
Yeah.
He had Joe Dante putting him in Gremlins. Like
Spielberg.
But was it Chuck Jones who solidified that character of Daffy, who is now he's now allowed to be something different? And I was even watching clips of Space Jam, and it's like, oh, they made him a little wackier in Space Jam too. So maybe the grip of Chuck Jones was loosening at that point. And Roger Rabbit, of course, too.
Yeah.
I think it was just something they labbed onto because it was just easier to animate and write, probably, because, you know, if you have this character that's just angry all the time, that's easier to draw than more poses of him flipping out and going nuts. I'm trying to think. I think it started because Daffy became a more interesting character for Chuck Jones than Bugs, because Bugs you had to have certain standards and a certain quota, but Daffy allowed him to experiment and sort of became his alter ego in a way, you know, the misunderstood genius.
Oh, yeah. Those were, I got the sense from that retrospective we went to, but I thought that before, that like Chuck's favorites were guys he could imprint himself on. Like he loved Pepe Le Pew because he's like, oh, I feel unattractive to women. And, or I love his Three Bears ones, but it's because he was an angry father who just...
No, it was his father was angry.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Those are so good. Yeah, one of those is at the festival, too.
That was, I think, I laughed the hardest at that one because that dad was the meanest.
Yeah.
He's beating his disabled son in the face, and he's gonna beat his wife, but he just misses. Yeah, it's great. I would credit him and writer Mike Maltese. You've got to give him props too, because he's the one who kept everything on Earth. That's what Frizz and Maltese said in later years. They had to remind Chuck, you know, it's like, you know, this Bugs isn't a world weary sophisticate. He's a little smart ass from Brooklyn. You know, you've quit putting yourself in these pictures. And it's funny, when the WB studio shut down for a while and it reopened, Chuck was doing cartoons again for about a year without Maltese, and they're pretty insufferable. He did Bugs Bonnets, that one with all the hats going on, Elmer and Bugs changing their personalities. And he did Nightmare Hair, the one where he goes back to the King Arthur days. It's all right, but it's, you know, it's like, this isn't top drawer. And he also did Rocket Squad with Porky and Daffy.
That's the Dragnet one.
They think it's Dragnet. It's a parody of a show no one remembers, Racket Squad.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think I've heard
in space.
I think I've heard them reference that on Mystery Science Theater. That's all I know about it. It's like one of those things like, Joel said that once.
It's just like the dullest fucking thing ever. It's like it's Porky and Daffy without that dynamic of Daffy trying to do everything but failing, but Porky's just there and he accomplishes everything.
As a kid, I did prefer Duck Dodgers to seeing that one in the rotation.
Oh God,
me too.
And then the other thing is, it just feels like they had leftover ideas and concepts and they just shoved them in there because that cartoon probably ran over budget. But anyway,
we can skip to the end of Daffy's life. There's a few more things I want to talk about. So
sure.
The end of Daffy's first life was, of course, the dreadful late 60s, where we got things like I believe the Patty Freeling cartoons, like Anna and the Aardvark, Bunny and Clyde, all the cartoons that would be on in the Nickelodeon rotation, and I would say, oh God, no. Even as a 7-year-old.
That black logo with the modern graphic was just a sign that you were in for a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yep. It was like a siren, like something wrong is happening here.
See what's on Cartoon Network now. You better get out of here.
But as you mentioned, Thad, they had the Daffy and Speedy Gonzales cartoons inexplicably paired together, but as you said, for crass reasons, because they knew what audiences wanted those characters, and those are bad cartoons.
Bad.
And the last, I hate this so much, but the last Looney Tunes cartoon is a Cool Cat cartoon.
Engine Trouble.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
The last cartoon has the most racist name. Engine Trouble.
Oh, God.
Engine Trouble.
Yes,
as in
I
a
get it.
native person, yes.
Yes.
And Cool Cat sucks. R.I.P. Is Larry Storch dead?
No,
Okay.
Larry Storch is still with it.
I
He's
can't
awesome.
believe it.
It's
Okay,
just
Larry
those
Storch.
cartoons suck.
That's
But,
good.
You know, F Troop is brilliant. You know, but
I mean, he's 99, and this cartoon comes out. I mean, this podcast comes out in 4 days. Who knows what's going to happen?
yeah, you guys have that fucking curse with me.
I knocked on this table.
We're knocking on wood. Yeah.
But I did want to talk about briefly. So we talked about Daffy Duck's life. I do want to talk about the people who portrayed Daffy Duck. Of course, in the cartoons we're talking about today, it's Mel Blanc, the voice of 90% of Looney Tunes characters. And
basically every male except for Elmer Fudd.
Yeah.
It's Mel Blanc. And even if it isn't male, it's Mel doing a female voice. So.
The rare times a woman was in it. Like,
yeah. But Daffy has gone through a rotation of different actors to portray him post Mel Blanc. Jeff Bergman mostly took over all of Mel Blanc's roles after he died in 1989. And Jeff Bergman did like Porky, Elmer, Daffy. I believe he did Bugs as well.
He did Bugs. Yes, he did.
And then, so Joe Lasky was another one. I think he's my favorite because he also played Plucky Duck. And he did a lot of Daffy stuff in the 90s. I'm sorry, Thad, what'd you say?
Nah, yeah, poor Joe. Yeah.
And he's deceased now, so R.I.P. Joe Lasky.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's sad.
And
it's the Grandpa Lou curse.
Oh, that's true. He took over for Grandpa Lou, originally played by a very old man on Rugrats.
You're right. Yeah. Oh, that's sad.
And D. Bradley Baker is the current voice of Daffy, but he played him in Space Jam as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the Space Jam Daffy's fine. He's good.
And
Eric Bauza is doing the voice now. So.
Oh, really? For the new, the newer shorts?
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think he's doing I think he might be doing Bugs too. I don't know. I know he's doing Daffy.
Interesting.
But...
Well, I know from the Looney Tunes show, and I believe Wabbit, D. Bradley Baker was Daffy. But I was listening to all of these voices. And they're all good Daffys. Like, I think no one has really gotten Bugs, especially. I love Billy West. I don't like his Bugs Bunny. But
he's okay when he's directed on Bugs.
Yeah.
Well, he's not a great Bugs.
But I got to say, I think Joe Lasky is my favorite just because of just being indoctrinated by Tiny Toons and hearing his voice so much. But they're all really good. I don't know if you have an opinion, Thad, but I think they're all really good Daffys.
Joe was probably the best at it, I think, because what's funny is that Sylvester was the closest to Mel Blanc's speaking voice, and Daffy's just a little more high. How did he put it? He said Daffy was Jewish and Sylvester was Goyim or something like that. But yeah, Joe was probably the best at it.
I think he did Sylvester in the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries too, which is a very
He did Tweety too in that, so
if he was Daffy when Daffy appeared in Tiny Toons, I think that was my favorite of them too. Not that I think D. Bradley Baker does a good job, it's tough to you'll never. I was going to bring up the 50th anniversary of Bugs special.
Oh Jesus, are you?
Well, because that was when my Daffy fandom really took hold because. It was 89, I believe it was. And I rewatched it. I zipped through it in prep for this. I was like, boy, this is bad. But I remembered it as a kid as great. And the plot of it is that Daffy's pissed off. Nobody celebrated his 50th anniversary 2 years earlier. And it's just him complaining to Rex Reed or about hey, why aren't I? Some people should celebrate me. That Daffy and that's okay. But the thing that hurts it now watching it as a kid, I had no idea. But you see a very stiff Daffy superimposed over video footage, and then they cut to classic cartoons. You're like, oh, this looks like shit now.
Yeah, because of this podcast, I was watching things I had never seen before, not in complete viewings, of course, because they're mostly terrible, but things like the Groovy Ghoulies. Is that Filmation? Is that Filmation? I think I killed that.
I think it was.
That was the only time they ever sub-licensed their characters. Yes, the Filmation,
and they
never did it again.
It's terrible. But I also saw things that were kind of okay. Like I watched, they did a few shorts throughout the '90s just to try them out. Like, will people care? So I watched Box Office Bunny, Blooper Bunny, and Carrot Blanca. And I think Carrot Blanca is probably the best because it is just a very, very faithful Casablanca parody.
Yeah,
and
it's
probably
just-
the last year you could reference Casablanca and have people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that cartoon cost like $4 million, so that's why they don't make them.
It's a really good looking cartoon.
It is. My buddy Will Finn did some animation on that. But yeah, Blooper Bunny's probably my favorite, just because of, it's just this whole cynical take on this really stupid concept of celebrating a cartoon character's birthday, and everybody knows it.
And there's a lot of in Blooper Bunny, there's a lot of like early CGI where a lot of it is in the first person of someone holding a camera and following Daffy around, and there are things moving that are not traditional animation. It's like 3D backgrounds with 2D characters, and it's pretty convincing for being made in 1991.
Yeah. What's weird with those, they never wanted to really put the money into the classic characters like they did with the new stuff, what that Spielberg was involved with. It was a very strange time.
Yeah, I didn't understand that as a kid. I wondered why. Well, I mean, when I found out as a kid that these played before movies, that's how they originally started, it made me wonder, like, why don't I watch cartoons before movies now? I missed that.
I felt like I was being ripped off.
They'd rather put commercials in front of them. And you know what? I don't understand why they haven't struck a deal with one of the theater chains, like, with that little block of shit that they put in front of the movies it's playing before. It's like, put a cartoon in there. I'd show up for the movie a little early.
It'd make people happy.
I know. Put a different. You've got like 1,000 cartoons and maybe 700 of them without any actual issues. Put a different cartoon in there every week.
Well, that 7 minutes could be used for an ad for the new TNT original series that they're making with the government.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't the thing before movies like sort of like an Access Hollywood style like block
Maria
of things?
Menounos
Like
hosts
the Spot?
Yeah.
Is it called the Spot or something?
Spot.
Yeah.
One of the weirdest parts is when they say, like, download this thing on your phone and you can play a video game with other people in the theater.
Turn off that phone.
Use your phone now in the dark theater. We'll wait. We do have to get to Daffy Duck.
Yes,
Any other final trivia from you, Thad? I will say to our listeners, before you listen to the rest of this podcast, go online and watch these cartoons, because I do have clips for these cartoons, but they will not do the animation justice, and I'm sure we'll try our best, but even our descriptions, our very professional descriptions of these cartoons, will not do them justice. They're all online. They're easy to find. Just type in the names. You'll find them. You can even buy them if you want.
They're on Amazon in some Daffy Duck collection. You got to dig through it. Their search function's not so good, but I paid for these. But yeah, they're also just on YouTube.
Yeah, and Daily Motion.
Yeah.
Anything else on Daffy, Thad, you want to throw out there before we start?
Probably just I think he's my personal favorite, and
Ooh, me too.
And Piggy Bank probably is my personal favorite cartoon. Period.
Ooh,
Duck Amuck is very close, but Bank is.
Yeah, that's fine. I would say Duck Amuck is my favorite cartoon ever.
Wow.
So
I fault no one for saying that.
Look, I know. My last thing I'll say before we get into it is, I know I'm a normie. It's normie to like Chuck Jones and the Greedy Little Miser the most, and Duck Amuck. It's everybody's favorite, but
it's PC. It's PC to hate Chuck Jones.
but yeah, I rewatching it. If we hadn't gone to that Chuck Jones thing, I wouldn't have had it re-solidified for me that no, Duck Amuck is my favorite. Seeing it on the big screen with an audience did it. But Greedy Little Miser, Daffy hit my favorite. We didn't even talk about Rabbit Season, Duck Season. Like,
oh yeah.
Daffy versus Bugs is my favorite Daffy. Like, that is, maybe it says something about me that my favorite character is the guy who's jealous of someone else and has problems with self-confidence that he projects onto the world.
I'm the Bugs Bunny of this network.
I'll happily be Daffy Duck. I will be. But yes, that's the last thing I wanted to say on Daffy.
One thing to go off on a tangent here, that's Looney Tunes related. So we saw that Chuck Jones festival in like 2017 probably, and from the very beginning I have a bone to pick with What's Opera Doc. I think it's pretentious and boring, and I really wanted Thad to weigh in on this because I saw it and I appreciate the craft, but I don't think it's a funny cartoon. And I just
think it is.
Okay, I just didn't get. I mean, it's such a high concept.
When was the last time you saw What's Opera Doc before that?
Probably in the 90s.
Okay, well, because like my saying with everyone who's saying Chuck Jones is overrated, try and distance yourself a few years if you can without seeing those and look at them again with fresh eyes, because I did that with Duck Amuck, and it like showed up randomly one day. I hadn't seen it in years, and I was pissing my pants laughing at it. And I sort of did it with Opera Doc too. I mean, I love the big fat horse and the Bugs is shrilling as Brunhilde with his toes squeezing. But he's still kind of posed like one of the Playboy bunnies.
I did laugh, but I did not laugh until I heard. I mean, if you want to see shorts the way they meant to be seen, see them in a theater, because I think by the end of that, Henry, we're like, we hurt from laughing.
Yeah. Every one, you understand that that they had made them to be seen by a large audience all together laughing at it. Like, I'll say it in Duck Amuck, but there's many scenes in so many classic Looney Tunes where when they're talking to the audience, they are not talking to one child watching a TV screen. They are talking to a mass of people. Mm-hmm. That's when they ask if there's a doctor in the audience. It makes no sense when you're a kid watching it on Nickelodeon.
I was confused. Is there a tiny man in my living room?
My issue with the programming of that, it was seemingly programmed by his like son or grandson who was there. And I was like, I want to see a Wile E. Coyote. I want to see a Marvin the Martian. Honestly, like, look, I love Pepe. This is not the time to show Pepe Le Pew.
No.
Not in 2017. With a cartoon that ends with the joke that he kidnapped a woman and has her chained up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the time to do this one.
Yeah, but I will say they were smart enough to play the Dover Boys, which at that point in time was being heavily memed online. Heavily.
Boy, yes.
And it's a great cartoon.
Dover Boys is in my top 5 of favorite Looney Tunes. Yes.
Dover Boys. I still think One Froggy Evening is one of the best. I don't care.
That was there too.
About it being overrated. Trying to think. Favorite Chuck. Long-haired hair.
That was there. Yeah.
Duck Dodgers, of course.
We didn't get a Duck Dodgers.
See that I would think that would be the choice one. That might be my number 2.
I don't think we got a Roadrunner either.
No Roadrunner.
I was fine with that.
That's always strange. They put out a couple of Jones compilations without any Roadrunner. It's very strange. At least one. See, one you could be screaming.
If you see one, you see them all.
They're not meant to be seen to get back to back. This fucking Roadrunner show shit. He only made like one of those a year. So, and that's the thing which really hurts the cartoons in syndication and in block viewing. They weren't meant to be seen like that. You might see one character every couple of years going to the movies.
That's one of my favorite Roadrunners, though, is the one of the children watching it and questioning everything. Like, I love that.
That one is great. But enough talking about every Looney Tune cartoon.
Yes.
We'll be back after the break to talk about the Great Piggy Bank Robbery and Duck Amuck.
My name is Daffy Duck. I work on a merry-go-round. The job was swell. I did quite well till the merry-go-round broke down. The guy that worked with me was a horse with a lavender eye. Around in world we'd wink at girls till the merry-go-round broke down. Up and down and round it we sped. The dizzy pace soon went to my head. Now you know why I'm dizzy and do the things I do. I am a screw and you'd be too if the merry-go-round broke down.
Do you know me? I'm an important Warner Brothers star, but I'm not always recognized. Watch it, Buster. That's why I wear this, my Warner Brothers t-shirt. With it, people see me for the star I am. Good morning, Mr. Duck.
I have your autograph, Mr. Duck.
Oh, hey, you're my favorite duck.
Now you can own the same t-shirt and enjoy the same popularity. Just call this number and they'll send you a t-shirt for just $9.95. With your shirt, you'll also get a free catalog of Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes stuff, like movie posters, mugs, and director's chairs. So don't leave home without calling and ordering. Oh, that's Daffy! Daffy Duck! I can't believe you'd mistake a big star like me for that other duck who can't even talk straight.
For your Warner Brothers t-shirt and catalog, call toll-free 1-800-2-WARNER.
And don't forget to call, folks.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to What a Cartoon, where all of our succotash is suffering. This is The Break, of course, and I'm one of your hosts for this one, Bob Mackey. Henry?
Hey, it's me, Henry Gilbert. Neon Noodle to my friends.
Neon Noodle? Anyhow, thanks for listening to this episode of What a Cartoon. You could be listening to the premium version of this podcast if you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and sign up at the $5 level. You get every episode of this podcast 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and the same goes for our sister podcast, Talking Simpsons. You'll also get our limited miniseries. We've done 3 limited miniseries so far behind the $5 paywall. That includes Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, and the currently wrapping up Talking of the Hill, all 13 episodes of King of the Hill's first season in our patented podcast format. We also have things like interviews, end of season wrap-ups, deleted scene specials, and just one-off specials when we want to do a thing we want to do.
Yeah, if you, for one thing, if you really like our super deep going into cartoon history with animators, I think you'll really love our interviews with Simpsons master animators David Silverman and Mark Kirkland, talking about their experiences on the animation side of things at The Simpsons.
And if you want to give even more to our Patreon and sign up for even longer podcasts, we have a newer special $10 tier just for you that covers movies.
Yes, that is correct. For $10 and up premium patrons, once a month, they get the What a Cartoon Movie podcast. It's like this one, but even longer, about a different animated feature film once a month. We started with Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Kiki's Delivery Service, Akira, a Goofy movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, The Secret of Nim, and this month we did Aladdin. All of those are available to you the second you sign up at the $10 and up level, and you'll get each month's new What a Cartoon Movie podcast only for you there. And we talk about these anime films over 3 hours long. So we've already done 7 at this point. That's over 22 hours of podcasting greatness right there of me and Bob going super deep into, how not only the films scene by scene, but also how they got made. Like, if you like this history of Daffy here, when we did a Goofy movie, I oversaw a long history on Goofy and going into Dippy Dog's entire life story. And when Bob produced the Secret of Nim one and talked all about the history of Don Bluth, I learned so much, and I'm sure you did too. Only can hear that if you are a $10 and up premium patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you were a patron, you could be listening to next week's episode about Thundar the Barbarian right now. And by the way, everything we do on this network is supported by patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So giving to us is a way to support us and have us do future things. Even more content could be coming in the future if we hit certain levels. So please go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And now we'll get back to our exploration of Daffy Duck cartoons, and Daffy Duck will teach you the proper way to run a railroad. Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, we have a special mini-series just for you.
We're going through the entire first season of King of the Hill, and you can only hear it if you're a $5 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
We're giving the Talking Simpsons treatment to all 13 episodes of King of the Hill's first season, and if you want a free sample, you'll find the first episode available for free in the Talking Simpsons feed. Patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. It's the only place you'll find the first season of Talk King of the Hill.
Made you go click, 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 click. It's real easy, man.
Greetings. My name is Daffy. There's no other duck like me because I'm so daffy. And the reason I'm daffy and so gosh darned riff-raffy and so screwy and laughy is because those hunters won't leave me alone.
So we're back with the 1946 cartoon, The Great Piggy Bank Robbery. I believe from my research it was actually produced in 1945 but released in 1946. Yeah. Just a little factoid for you.
Yes, that was the backlog thanks to Technicolor shortages after the war. Cartoons were usually... If you look at the release date, it was usually made 1.5 or 2 years before it.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, Bob Clampett was making this in the early months of 1945. I'm looking at my notes right now. Mel Blanc got his $75 for the session.
Wow.
And I know, right? That's the fucking bargain of the century.
That's like 1,000 steak dinners in 1945, though.
It's $1,000, but they got 2 cartoons out of him for that. So
for the same session, man. That while we see pumpkin pie prices in this, so they'll buy a lot of pumpkin pies.
Yeah, 35 cents for an entire pie. Sign me up. And also, the war had not ended at that point. Mm-hmm. It ended on September 2nd, 1945. So the war was winding down.
I feel like that's why there's a couple of war bond or war rationing jokes in this one too, or at least one. There's one. This is the wackiest ass Daffy ever. Like, with so many insane poses. Like this is I understand why many see this as the greatest cartoon ever.
Yeah. And it should be stated up front. I mean, we talked about him first off in the podcast, but this cartoon greatly influenced John Kricfalusi with Ren and Stimpy, and Ren and Stimpy went on to influence every cartoon made after 1991. So the DNA of this cartoon is in all cartoons,
at least American ones.
Yeah,
anyway.
And we could point out a few things where you can definitely see a lot of the Ren and Stimpy influence here.
Well, also,
the influence on Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. I didn't know this until I looked at the IMDb trivia page. So this was the first cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, at least according to IMDb.
Starting off with a bang.
Really?
Yeah.
Very
but,
weird.
But yeah, including, so talking about people who worked on it, Bob Clampett is the director. This is his Daffy. He's a very madcap, wacky director. Animation, the credited animators are Rod Scribner, Manny Gould, Bill Melendez, and Izzy Ellis. One of the names that might jump out at you is Bill Melendez.
Yeah, I didn't know. I guess I should have realized B. Melendez was that guy.
Yeah, he was Rod Scribner's assistant for many years, and he joined the ranks of full animator during the last year of Bob's stuff. It's sort of Scribner light. The scene where coming up where he's jumping around and he punches himself in the face, that's Bill.
Yeah, I was wondering, so I'm a guy who can pick out directors based on the scenes in front of me. Other people can actually pick out animators. You can go online and read breakdowns for almost every cartoon. Like this person had this cut, this person had this cut, and sometimes they have the cut sheet available.
Most of those.
Okay, well, thank you. But I can definitely tell this scene is by the same animator who did that scene. You can definitely tell when Daffy's tongue is going crazy, it's got to be the same person. And a lot of just straight on, dead on Daffy looking at the camera shot and just talking and his tongue's flying everywhere.
As a kid, this was one of my favorites, mostly because I could identify with a love of comic books and wanting to read the comic book the second you got it in your hand. Now, as an adult, I appreciate its artistry far more than some stupid kid could.
The story was by Warren Foster, who worked on approximately 171 Looney Tunes shorts. And actually, I had not read that much about the writing of these shorts, Thad. These were written as storyboards or as story scenes? How was the writing of these cartoons? How did that take place?
You'll hear differing accounts from some of the people we discussed, but most of the Warner cartoons were on storyboards primarily. What would happen is they would assign the storymen. Now at this point there were 3 or 4. There was Warren Foster, Mike Maltese, and Ted Pierce, and they would say, okay, this is a Daffy, this is a Bugs, this production is a Daffy, this is a Bugs, this is a one shot, you can do what you want, give me an idea. They'd have about 6 weeks to come up with the story, and they would pitch it to the director. The director would add his own jokes and touch at that stage, and then it would go on from there. And after the war, Clampett wasn't so much involved with this, but when in the days when it was just Chuck, Frizz, and Bob McKimson, they would all have a jam session and pitch ideas to each other's boards when it was at that point. But Clampett wrote a lot of his own material too. The ones that he didn't steal from radio, but it would start out like that, and then it would go to voices, and then they would have the track, and they would know everything. And I gotta say, Bob probably really made Mel Blanc sweat during this one.
He is
he envisioned the kind of animation he wanted to get out of Rod Scribner and those guys. Yeah,
there's a ton of screaming, a ton of manic Daffy energy. Let's get into the short itself. Again, please watch this short. Stop what you're doing. Pull over to the side of the road if you're driving. Pull it up on YouTube or Dailymotion or whatever. But this cartoon starts. We pan across an idyllic farm. We can see at this point in Warner Animation, the backgrounds are kind of getting less representational. We'll see a lot more of that in the Maurice Noble era of impressionistic backgrounds. and things like that. But we pan across this farm. Daffy lives on a farm, of course. He's a duck, does not live in a house with Porky or anything like that. But he's pacing around near a mailbox and tapping his foot and wondering, why doesn't the mailman get here? Why don't he get here is what he says. And he says, suffer and succotash.
Yep.
Not Daffy's catchfreeze, but he still uses it.
He's saying it a year before Sylvester's first appearance.
And I believe that was stolen from something else, too.
Yeah, it was stolen from, like, I think I said earlier, it's stolen from Judy Canova's show.
Oh, yeah.
Sylvester the Mailman, voiced by Mel Blanc.
That's right.
I love, the starting straight there of having Daffy like pounding his feet up and down to Raven Scott's Powerhouse. Is just dun, dun, dun. So great. The Powerhouse is like it's the perfect cartoon song. I was shocked to find out in slight research that it was not written for cartoons, and it was just like it was a 1937 jazz song that Warner just bought and put in everything.
You got to the club with your finest gal and listen to Powerhouse.
How could you just sit? Yeah, that's so weird. I can't see Jazz dancing to that with my Jazz cigarette in one hand.
But the unseen mailman appears. We see a very eerily realistic hand daintily open the mailbox and put mail in.
His fingernails are so long. It's really weird.
It's a very well done, almost rotoscope looking hand, just gently putting the mail in there. Daffy pulls almost too much mail out of the mailbox, grabs a green book, and quickly runs across the farm. And I'll play a clip of what happens next.
You're here at last, and you're mine, all mine. I can hardly wait to see what happened to Dick Tracy. I love that man. No, don't go in there, Dick. He's got a knife. He threw a knife on him. Ah! Please don't let Noodle Nose kill Dick. Phew. Was that ever close? Oops, they're at it again. Oh, I hate to look. Hooray! Dick got him. Yee-hoo! What a man. He's my hero. Oh, boy, if I could only beat Dick Tracy, I'd show those goody criminals.
So Daffy punches himself in the face.
I thought he hit a gong at the end of that.
But I love Daffy. This is the first time we see him as a comic book nerd. I think the only time. Yeah. But just, I don't know if I'm using this wrestling term. He's a real mark for these Dick Tracy comics.
He is. No, I love the animation. Maybe my favorite shot in the whole thing is him holding the comic book, and it just says comic book on the front of it. He's just shaking it like it's mine, all mine.
And when it's just spread out in front of him in his hands, his chin is in his hands, and he's just enraptured in this comic book.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not telling Thad anything, but I learned this from the research too that Clamp had just ripped off himself with the shot of him looking over the comic book.
Oh, okay.
It's from the 1941 tune Farm Frolics, where it's one of those ones where it's like, we're on a farm. What's a bunch of jokes we can do in a row? And one is the dog gets the paper, but instead of giving it to his master, he runs behind the barn and starts reading the comics.
Okay.
And he has the exact posing of Daffy, and even says, "I can't wait to see what happens to Dick Tracy."
And a direct reference to Dick Tracy, which at that point was a very popular character. And I want to say the comic that Daffy is reading is probably, it's fictional, of course, but at this point, comics were mostly. Something like Dick Tracy would be a compilation of newspaper comics.
Yep.
Those were the first comic books.
Yes.
Yeah, it's oh, sorry, Thad.
No, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's something that gets lost in history of comic book fandom that comic books were secondary to strips in it was a bigger deal to get to draw, say, the Superman comic strip than it was to do the monthly books. That's where the more of the money was. So,
and people old like Henry and I only know Dick Tracy from the 1990, 89, 90 Warren Beatty bizarre movie. I kind of want to watch it again just because it's wow, they made this. They made this and it's real.
Warren Beatty's obsession with Dick Tracy is some interesting thing. He's totally he's right of his age. He's Dick Tracy has been my dream. I'm gonna play him someday in a movie starring my much younger girlfriend Madonna as the villain.
And they'd be married forever. But I do want to say that I'm not going to make too many Ren and Stimpy comparisons during this cartoon because it would get old. But I can see a lot of just what Ren and Stimpy would be in this cartoon, especially There is a, I don't know, 30-second scene of a character reading a comic book, and it's fun to watch. It reminds me of, there's a scene of Ren reading a letter or writing a letter. It's just like they made a scene of a man sitting down reading a letter fun to watch. That's sort of like imagination. Like, how do we make this mundane thing fun? Like every cool pose you need to put in there to make a mundane thing fun is in that scene we just played.
Well, with Daffy here is that every pose works. You know, that it's as I wrote in my book, John K's bastardization of that style, just making every damn drawing weird. He's not. See, every damn drawing here is weird too, but it has a purpose. It's going from one throw of passion to another. He's just not making these weird faces for the hell of it.
And as we pointed out before, even Bob Clampett was not afraid to reuse an expression or piece of animation, unlike John K.
Reuse. Bob was the worst with it. There's a shot coming up when he's answering the phones. It's just it's like a second and a half. You can tell like it's really off. He's reused from another cartoon of Daffy answering a phone from Baby Bottleneck.
I do like how he says, "I love that man," looking right at the camera.
That's from Fibber, McGee, and Molly. That is Marlon Hunt.
Wow,
saying it as a black woman.
Keep that line in your brain. We'll go out on that line with this cartoon. They love that line.
I mean, it's a cute line. I used to be more negative about like, oh, you just repeated what's in the movies, but I mean, now like Freakazoid, when I was a kid, I loved it, and he just said things that were from commercials that I knew. Like it's just kind of the cartoon tradition to look at the audience like, we all know what this is from, right? Just the laughter of recognition. And now it's like they won pop culture. No one remembers Fibber, McGee, and Molly. Like, as all these radio bits, I just thought as a kid, like, I'm a bad little boy. I was like, oh, that's Bugs for you, old Bugs Bunny.
Or he don't know me very well, do he? All that stuff. I mean, it's all old radio stuff for the most part.
I love every pose of Daffy reading that comic book.
Yeah, but just like doing like flips and cartwheels as he's excited that over Dick Tracy winning, and I just like how gullible he is for these comics. He falls for every very formulaic thing in a Dick Tracy comic, and he's so excited when Dick Tracy wins. He just cartwheels across the lawn. It's so cool.
That childish naivete makes him really, appealing as a character too.
Yeah.
More so that I guess too, Stimpy has that to him as well. If we want to make a comparison to characters, there,
well, you might as well. It's like everything from everything that was innovative about Ren and Stimpy. Like it most of it was from a Bob Clampett cartoon, just amped up.
Him punching himself in the face. It's funny and all, but it feels like something later Daffy's wouldn't bother with. They're like, we could just start with him as Duck Tracy.
Yeah.
You don't need a dream sequence for this.
It's like, am I to believe this duck is suddenly a crime fighter? You need to establish that he lives on a farm first, sir.
How would he
Mr.
become
Clampett?
How would he become Stupid Duck? That doesn't make sense.
But yes, now we cut to a noir parody, and Daffy is now Duck Tracy, and we see him seemingly interrogating somebody on the other side of a window. He says, I'm going to pin it on you. I'm going to pin it on you. And then we see him playing Pin the Tail on the Donkey. Very funny gag. Again, you need to watch these cartoons.
Yes. Well, also, if you watch it, you could catch one of the many freeze frame gags.
Yeah.
And they draw Dick Tracy's silhouette twice in there for like 4 frames. It's one of those things like as a kid, and even now that my first rewatch, I was like, wait, Daffy gets weird for a sec there. What the hell was that? And then unpause.
Yeah.
Like the Jessica Rabbit gag that got people in trouble.
All right.
They weren't made for freeze frames. They weren't made for freeze framing technology to get people in trouble when they like draw the top of Bugs Bunny's penis as his towel falls.
Now Jessica has pants on in that scene. So all the phones start ringing, and Daffy turns to answer them. We see there's a giant hole in his blindfold. He was cheating at his basically solitaire version of Pin the Tail on the Donkey.
Yeah, with that reveal that he has one eye, the eye that was away from the camera was out in his blindfold was so great too.
And there's a lot of phone gags. Daffy's answering all the old timey phones. There's a very tall phone that's labeled long distance, and he picks up another phone and he says, "Oh, French phone." So he speaks a lot of French and fake French into it. And I found out that is a French phone. I just typed French phone into Google, and it's like, oh yeah, it's the kind with like the cradle.
I think of it as the Miss Piggy phone, because the fancy phone Miss Piggy answers.
Well, she does say moi a lot.
I like that gag because it works enough on its own, but they don't trust the audience, so he just looks at the audience like French phone. And
it's the same like fake language gibberish they would use a lot. But it's funny because it's about the French and not...
Mel Blanc is a master of gibberish.
It turns out there is a piggy bank crime wave.
Hey, it looks like a piggy bank crime wave. Why don't people keep their piggy banks in a safe place, like I do? It's gone! My piggy bank's been stolen! Oh, Angoli! Angoli! What'll I do? I know! I'll call Dick Tracy, the famous detective. That's it. Give me Dick Tracy. Hello, Dick Tracy? Yes, Dick Tracy speaking. Well, listen, Duck. Hey! What's the matter with me? I'm Duck Tracy. Now to find the gangster's hideout.
So most of this cartoon is just one character screaming, just like Duck Amuck. I don't think any other. Maybe Neon Noodle has a line of dialogue, but that's it. In this cartoon, I wanted to ask Thad. So, like, I wrote this down because they would eventually like downplay, like Daffy would always have the list, but they would eventually downplay the tongue acting. But the one shot of him saying "say," it looks like a piggy bank crime wave. Just like the front-facing shot, his tongue is all over every frame. His tongue is just like this eel coming out of his mouth. It's so amazing. Do you know who did that cut?
It's Rod Scribner.
Okay, yeah, like he does my favorite, like insane tongue animation on Daffy.
He was one of a kind, and he did that whole shot with him answering all the phones. That single shot where he puts his face, lunges in, and then he zips off, and he's talking to himself. That's all Scribner, but yeah, it's kind of, he was sort of a sad case, Scribner. They sort of treated him like any regular animator when he had all of this pent up energy in him. He actually was animating for Jones originally, when Jones first started. And then he went over, he did a couple for those guys, Ben Hardaway and Cal Dalton. And then he went over to Tex Avery. And you can kind of see a little bit of the budgeting Scribner style there, where everything's starting to get, everything's made of plastic on this character. But Avery didn't really he let the animators be themselves, but he would not push them like that. Clampett, on the other hand, he found a real friend with, and Scribner had this idea. It's like, hey, can we do more looser stuff? It's probably going to be hell on the inkers, but it's like, no, yeah, go for it. And all of a sudden, you start seeing this style in stuff like Bugs Bunny Gets the Boyd, Tale of Two Kitties. That's when it really starts, and it's just sort of evolved into this. This is as full as the Warner animation got, and this is why it downplayed, because it was expensive to do that many drawings and put the ink and paint gals through that much work.
Well, yeah. How does somebody graduate to be a director? Why did Scribner ever become a director at other places? Or
no, Scribner lost his mind, unfortunately. He was a smack addict, and he was out with TB for a couple of years. After Clampett left, he was animating for McKimpson, and then he was out with TB, and he came back, and he was just sort of treated as a regular animator. I mean, you can tell Scribner scenes in the 50s McKimpson stuff. It's, it just gets sadder to watch because it's kind of a sick comparison, but I always equate it to you went into a institution's bathroom and it got worse and worse when he went over to UPA. He did some okay stuff for Jay Ward that was in his style. There's some Bugs Bunny Kool-Aid commercials actually by him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you look it up, I think I uploaded one of them. And, Tex was directing those, and he much later, and he was sort of we're giving him his thing. And it's funny. My friend Mark Kosler met Scribner in 69, and he did not remember Warner Brothers.
Oh, that's too bad.
That's
sad. So he just remembered. He just I do Snoopy and that, but I don't. Because Bill Melendez was his old friend, and he was giving him work.
Oh, that's
It really was sad. I don't know all the details because the family's really sensitive about it, of course. But it was just we have at least have this huge chunk of Clampett 40s cartoons where this was an artist at the peak of his ability.
Yeah,
we got that.
His name is one that is called out as often as a director is. I know him. He's like the one animator that I know offhand. I hear his name spoken of all the time in terms of like, oh, he was so good. He was one of the best animators of that golden age.
I love how the phones shatter in his hands too. Like they just break in half. Yeah. It's so great.
I love any old-timey phone that could just be a murder weapon. Yeah. Like that phone weighs 30 pounds. It's probably giving you cancer as you use it.
That's how I learned what those phones look like. It was confusing to me at first as a kid. I'm like, what are these things?
Yeah, my grandma had to explain to me. He's like, no, you picked up the earpiece. I live in such an old building that when you enter my doorway, there is a place to put one of those giant box phones on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a fixture for it on the wall. It's just like, of course, you're going to put your giant box phone here, and you'll stand next to it to make a phone call.
But you couldn't put your hand through it and reach the other person to strangle them.
No. Did Scrivener also do the agony bit there? That's
I think that's another guy. That might be Izzy Ellis.
That was said by many a Looney Tune. Oh, agony! But his Daffy saying of it here might be my favorite I can remember. Like
that's another radio show.
His magic teeth. I just love his magic teeth popping out. Wait, what's the radio show this one's stealing from?
Well, it's from Joe Penner, who they were making fun of with Eggett. You nasty man.
Well, those were the first podcasts.
Yes, but it was something the cameraman Smokey Garner always said. He picked it up and then it ended up in the cartoons because he said it so much.
Yeah, I saw that Clampett described him as like some sweet little guy from the Ozarks, this hillbilly cameraman.
Yep.
God, I was just thinking, like talking about old timey radio, like Fibber McGee and Mollywood Pods talk about like Chesterfield cigarettes. It's no different than podcasts talking about dick pills or mattresses
or Adam and Eve.
Best mattress to jerk off to after you're done listening to this.
If only we heard that instead of Chesterfields. I mean, those at least gave more cancer. Like that's
the best one to take it to the Simpsons, I think, is the one with Itchy and Scratchy doing the cigarette ad. I just love that.
Yeah,
they're hacking up Wong at the end. No bones about it. This stuff kills you.
So we got some classic vaudeville like Three Stooges stuff next. Like Daffy wants to find the gangster's hideout. He hails a cab, tells it to follow that car. The cab speeds off without him. He says, "Just keeping them on their toes."
Love that. Love that joke. It's a street comedy. Like it's a reused joke. They didn't make it up, but it's funny.
Yeah. And so he's pacing down the street with his lensless magnifying glass, sticking his head through it. He runs into Sherlock Holmes. He kind of just shoves him out of the picture.
Scram, Sherlock. I'm working this side of the street. Love that.
And then Porky Pig makes an appearance. It looks like he's like playing a character, just like the shady trolley operator.
What's beautiful about it. It's like if this was like a fucking Tiny Toon or something, it would be overwritten where it's like, oh, it's Porky Pig. But he's just there. He's just this disgruntled piece of shit working the midnight shift on this train. It's beautiful. He's just there.
And this is the first time I've seen this gag, although I'm sure it's stolen from something or was originated somewhere else. But Daffy takes the trolley to the hideout, and the hideout is openly advertised with like neon signs and things. That's the first time I saw that gag. It's been reused so many times, just like the hideout that's not hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, and I didn't get it until this time too, but the extra joke is that he's 5 feet away from the hideout when he gets in the trolley. It moves an inch, and then he's there.
Yes.
God, it's so fun. It's like a gag a minute. I think a gag a second, not gag a minute.
Fire just constantly. This is Clampett killing it. It's funny, like for all they say about writers over dialogue things. Daffy's talking like every shot and describing every single thing he's doing. Like when he does the trap door, he's telling you what he's doing, but you don't mind it.
Yeah, it's like
funny.
There's a weird like parasocial relationship you have with Daffy where like he's talking to you. He's just like the writers of this know and the animators know, like the audience is aware of the genre. Mm-hmm. They know like Dick Tracy and detective stories. So Daffy's like, we know what we're talking about. We know what this is like.
Trapdoor. We all know trapdoors. I got my plan here, and I like his like kind of magician appearance of the stick. He's with too. He's got gloves this whole thing, which he basically never wears gloves.
I forgot about the gloves on him in this. Yeah,
it distracted me when I was closely watching. I was like, Well, what's with these fucking gloves here, Daffy? That's not you. In general, I do prefer the wider bill of a Chuck Jones Daffy, but this longer bill Daffy, they get so much great acting out of it.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too much about the tongue animation, but I was watching later Daffys. I watched that reel of the Daffys, and I noticed that he always had the list, but over time they would downplay the tongue a lot. And in this cartoon, he's spitting everywhere. They're animating just spit flying everywhere. They're having so much fun.
Well, that's Clampett. He pushed it to the limits. The only Sylvester he did, he made it a point that Sylvester's spitting all over the other cat.
Oh yeah.
That is true, yeah. So Daffy, he thinks he's going to avoid the trapdoor trick where there's a doorbell, but there's a trapdoor right under it. So he moves aside, he presses the doorbell with a pointer, and then a new trapdoor opens underneath him, and it drops him into the hideout.
And then when he falls down into the hideout, he looks right at the camera and says, "Was that trip really necessary?" Referencing a fuel rationing slogan of the 40s.
I didn't know that until you just said it now.
I had to look that up.
I forgot about that.
It was so specific. I was like, okay, that has to be. I just put the phrase into Google. It was telling people, it was the one time in America ever they were like, could you do less? Could you consume less?
I'm going to consume more.
There's a Woody Woodpecker called Ration Board. As long as we're talking about Daffy stuff, they took Woody up to a whole other level. It's called Ration Board, and that's how the cartoon starts. He's speeding, and he sees that sign. Is this trip really necessary? Sure, it's necessary. I'm a necessary evil.
That's a good line.
I think Woody would just join the Axis powers.
Yeah, he probably would.
As a chaotic evil character, of course. We have more clips coming up, don't worry, but a lot of this is visual, so we're just going to describe what happens. So Daffy is doing more marching along the ground. There's some nice footstep gags where he picks up one of the footsteps and looks at it, and he marches up the wall, up the ceiling, and he's like, just to explain why he can do this, like Duck Tracy can do anything.
Yeah. Lionel Richie style.
Yeah, he was the first walker on the ceiling. The footsteps go down to a mouse hole, and he knows it's Mouse Man. He says, "Come out of there, you rat." And Mouse Man, of course, is a giant hulking beast.
Love it.
And
God,
I like when he says, "Go back in again."
Go back.
I've got to call props to the animator here. This is Manny Gould's animation with Mouse Man. He was an old New York guy. And when he came to Hollywood, he's directing the Crazy Cat cartoons for Columbia, and those are pieces of shit. There's nothing. I love classic animation, but there's no merit to them whatsoever. But he ends up at Schlesinger's and in the Clampett unit, and he's doing this phenomenal stuff that's the halfway point between Bob McKimson's animation and Scribner's. And it's where did this guy come? Where did this come from? But it's funny because there's a photo of Scribner and Manny Gould, and Scribner looks how you think he'd look. He looks like this little wild-eyed guy, but Manny Gould's this big hulking guy from New York with suspenders and everything. But it's great stuff. Manny Gould, one of the all-time best. Yeah,
the giant mouse coming out of that hole. It's like he's inflating muscle. It's just such a weird physics to it that I just love. And that he also listens to the command of "go back inside." I love that too. And then the way Daffy shrinks into himself running away,
just like a hat on top of shoulders with eyes under it.
Fucking funny. God damn it.
But he walks right into the Rogues Gallery, and again, I won't.
This is the greatest.
I won't overdo the Ren and Stimpy stuff, but just the idea of just seeing a painting as a joke, a painting of a character as a joke, is definitely pulled from this. And again, watch these cartoons, but here is the Rogues Gallery of Duck Tracy.
Snake eyes. Ah! Idiot teeth! Oh, hammerhead! Oh no! Pussycat puss! Batman! Double header! Pickle puss! Pumpkinhead! Neon noodle! Jukebox jaw! Wolfman! Ruff! Ruff! You're all under arrest!
I just love this is like a scary cartoon for me as a kid. I think I found it so compelling because it was frightening, and just the lighting on these guys, the color, especially on that wolf character. And I think they're getting more impressionistic with the backgrounds, where like a lot of the backgrounds are just like a color wash.
Yeah,
just like here's a green color wash that should be the background. They're not getting as representational as they would be like in the late 30s, early 40s.
This is interesting for Clampett because his backgrounds generally weren't like this. He didn't really approach layout and backgrounds like this, getting really into the mood. Like he used to. What he would do is do normal layouts, like okay, here's the farm, here's the house, and he would do that like to normalize and make you help accept how insane his characters are getting. But now everything's batshit crazy, and that's what's beautiful about this. We might as well finish up the Ren and Stimpy connection. John K. Sycophant Dick Sucker, Eddie Fitzgerald, he directed A Return of Pluck Twacey or something on Tiny Toons, and it's like a thing point for point rip off.
It's just of beat for beat the same thing. Yeah.
No, you're totally right.
It doesn't work, but he didn't have the budget and he probably turned it in late, but whatever.
I would bet TMS could have done it well, but
yeah, I remember that cartoon. They had the benefit of there being Dick Tracy resurgence.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I don't know if it's bullshit, but the IMDb said that Warren Beatty wanted this short to play before his movie.
I have no idea.
But his movie was getting released by a Disney Touchstone, and they're like, "No, we're not doing it." Like that IMDb trivia I trust with my life, so it must be true.
But I love. I don't know how much of it is ad lib. Just like Daffy has a unique reaction, but he recognizes these characters. He's just like, "Oh my god, I know all of these villains and what they can do," and they're all again parodies of the variously deformed Manny Gould drawings from. Is it Manny Gould who did Dick Tracy?
Chester Gould.
Chester Gould. Sorry.
Where Manny Gould was the animator.
Yes, that's right. All the like very deformed Chester Gould. Like I've never read Dick Tracy, but I love the character design in that comic.
I love the design. Yeah, I've never read a Dick Tracy comic in my life. Well, who's everybody's favorite of the villains here? Jukebox Jaws, I think, my favorite.
Yes, I think Snake Eyes is the scariest one.
Oh yeah.
He looks like a corpse before Daffy shoots him.
I like how when he falls, his eyes fly out of his head.
That's cool.
A good one, yeah.
I just like Pussycat Puss because I like saying that. Pussycat Puss. Pussycat Puss.
Pussycat Puss gets a longer shot in full animation instead of just being a painting.
I mean, the way Mel Blanc says "puth" is makes it worth using. That's they're getting away with something when they still play that on TV.
Listen, folks, Puss used to be a face. Now it's something different.
Yes. No, it was still that.
I know.
They knew then what they were saying to you. Well, when we talk about tributes to this bit too was I mentioned it briefly in our Batman Brave and the Bold podcast, but in the first episode of Batmite, written by Paul Dini, which is insanely up its ass in references to comics, and I love it. But the last third of it is Batmite decides he wants to be Batman in the same way Daffy Duck wants to be Duck Twacey. And so he confronts all the rogues. And so it becomes from the seeing all the rogues to the end, they recreated, but it's Batman rogues. So he says the real names of rogues like Killer Moth, Mr. Zero, like he says all the old ass ones, Kite Man.
But they're all real characters.
They're the real characters, but they are drawn in this style in the same painting way too. It's a great scene anyway, but it pays off being a Batman mega fan plus awesome. Being a Warner nerd.
This motif of looking back and forth, I think it's from Maltese Falcon. There's a scene in there that's like this. It's just going quickly from one character to another when they're deciding to frame the one guy for it.
Oh yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
So all of the Rogues Gallery takes chase after Daffy. There's a great little shot of planes taking off of the Flat Top parody's head. Yeah. That's another ghoulish Garbage Pail Kids drawing. Just that Flat Top guy with green skin.
His no reaction to the planes flying off his head too. It makes him more disturbing.
And I have a brief clip of Rubberhead because in both of our cartoons, Daffy Duck is erased with a pencil. But
Chuck Jones ripped this off. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hear Rubberhead. I love his little expression.
I'm gonna rub you out, see? Rub you out.
That's fantastic. And furthermore, it's unbelievable. No.
I love that. Yeah.
Another Scribner scene. So
Perfect.
It made me think like fantastic had a different meaning that's changed over time. Just like, oh, that's fantastic meaning good. Fantastic means just like it's of the unreal, the realm of the unreal. It's fantastical.
Yep.
We ruined that word.
Yeah.
And,
And no one uses uncanny anymore either.
Well, I use them to describe all my favorite X-Men.
It's true. I'm sorry, Thad, you were saying?
Fantasia.
Oh, yeah,
There you
Fantasia.
go.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We see other villains like Pumpkinhead. Our first use of guns in this short. There's another great use of guns coming up very soon, but Daffy Duck.
I just laughed out loud at the extreme violence of this, that it turns he was up to this point, he's just been this goofy guy with like he did nothing violent. He's just looking at clues.
But he brought a grenade with him.
He did.
And I think so what Daffy Duck does, he throws a grenade at Pumpkinhead. The grenade doesn't explode, which I think is a joke. The grenade just shatters his pumpkin head without exploding.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of pumpkin pies fall from the sky. So Daffy Duck is killed for the first time in this cartoon.
35 cents a pie. That's a good deal. Maybe not in 46. Maybe that's an expensive
That could
pie.
be like a Whole Foods style pie right there. So Daffy Duck runs into a doorway. All the gangsters sort of cram into the doorway
I love
at
that
the same
shot.
time.
It's so they're like rubber. They're just like squishing in as fast as they can. Like it's or like a rat nest almost. It's just ugh.
And there's some great cartoon physics where Daffy Duck like breaks into pieces and the pieces come out through the criminal cracks and they all reform on the other side. And then that's when Daffy Duck pulls out a machine gun from nowhere. I thought he picked up Pumpkinhead's gun, but no, it's just like the gun from cartoon physics space. He just pulls it out from nowhere, slams the door, and fires like 1,000,000 bullets into the door. I love that. It is so violent. It is incredibly violent. And I watched this cartoon.
Never caught it from TV.
Yeah, I watched this cartoon 1,000,000 times, and Daffy Duck. I mean, it is a dream sequence, but Daffy Duck kills like 80 men.
It didn't give me pause once as a child, but yeah, just the straight on shot of Daffy like it's.
I
it's
want
so
an animated
extreme.
GIF of that. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
And then they all fall out in a row. It's such a great gag too, which apparently
You'll see a bunch of studio staffers in that body.
I was gonna say.
I did notice some of the unnamed villains looked like they were people that were on staff. But yeah, like
There's a woman in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
like a stack of dominoes, though. They're just like a great shot of them all falling out one by one, dead and full of bullets.
Full of.
Yeah.
And then they start. Okay, this is a joke. I was hoping maybe Thad could explain why. So the Tin Man is first, which was not a named villain, and so I'm guessing he's full of holes because that's less extreme than seeing a human body full of holes. And maybe it's even a Wizard of Oz gag. But then in the next shot, the Tin Man has a candy cane, which I don't fully understand.
I
that
don't.
gag.
I just think it's just a stupid drawing.
Okay. Yeah, instead of an axe, I guess he has a candy cane. It's just like a fun prop.
Maybe that shows that he was innocent. He's this innocent guy looking a candy cane, and you shot him.
There's the one ink and paint girl in there too. So,
Yeah.
You just shot everything.
Daffy killed a lot of people
killed
indiscriminately.
everyone.
So after this, he tangles with Neon Noodle, literally, and we have the end of the cartoon.
That Neon Needle one felt like they thought they were 10 seconds short. Like it kind of interrupts the pace because he's about to go in the room, but then it just kind of cuts to Neon Noodle, and then once he deals with him with the classic eat at Joe's, then he runs in there. So it almost kind of disrupts the pacing so much that it feels like out of place to me. Like it's hilarious, but
it is weird. Also, Neon Noodle kind of scared me as a kid, but I like how the Neon Noodle scene just takes place in a purple void. And again, it's very, very evocative, very impressionistic. I don't know where Daffy is fighting Neon Noodle, but it's very dreamlike and scary. But here is the clip with Neon Noodle. He is a Frankenstein monster made out of neon noodles, and we find him waking up from his dream and kissing a pig in the very end. But let's hear the clip.
Guess who?
Neon Noodle? Neon Noodle! The piggy bank! My own little piggy bank! I found you at last! My very own piggy bank!
Shall we dance?
Hooey!
I love that duck.
So Daffy wakes up on the farm out of his fantasy, and he finds himself kissing a pig, and who hasn't been there after you punch yourself in the face? You wake up in a pile of mud kissing a pig.
And that was Miss Sarah Berner doing the pig.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was Mel Blanc doing like a falsetto voice, but it's an actual woman.
Yeah. She was paid $50 for that line. So there you go.
I like to, for minutes of acting, that's not too bad. $50.
No, for a couple of lines, no, that's not bad. They might have had more. I don't know, but yeah, obviously.
But the him kissing a pig is not the best outro, but I like that they followed up with them going like, ha ha ha. They just we get a little Daffy. Woohoo.
Yeah, there are very few, in my opinion, good endings to these shorts. It's just like we have to stop. We are out of money. We're out of time.
We hit 7 minutes.
Yeah, like there's very rarely like a good final gag in a lot of these shorts. It's just an ending because it's like a bunch of gags and then an ending. I mean, they don't really need a good ending.
My extra analytical read on him kissing the pig IRL means that he was enacting the entire cartoon in real life, and he has shot a bunch of people right before this.
He killed a bunch of farmers.
He killed all the farmers. I also like when he goes into the closet full of piggy banks, he just hops right over the corpses, like doesn't give him pause at all.
Oh, yeah.
It's a giant pile.
I did notice that he just hopped over a pile of corpses. Again, I watched this cartoon a million times as a kid, and I loved it. I never thought, oh, those are dead bodies on the screen. It's like, no, Daffy Duck killed the bad guys. That was the Great Piggy Bank Robbery. Any final thoughts before we move on to Duck Amuck?
I just think it's perfection. It's got what more do you want? It's got all the color, the full animation, so many great bits of dialogue, the soundtrack. It's just fucking perfect, and it's funny. Bob was making this. It kind of feels like he knew he was going to be quitting soon. No, he went out on top, but he had a couple of other cartoons made because, like, everyone tries. The narrative is that, well, once Bob Clampett left, they brought everything back to Earth, and it's like, well, yes and no, because a couple of the cartoons Bob was starting were very much in the later calmer style of Warner's. Cartoon he started, one of them was the Goofy Gophers he started. That was his. He did the soundtrack. And Birth of a Notion, the one with the Peter Lorre scientist with Daffy, that was his first. And it was taken over by McKimson.
Okay.
So that has echoes of Piggy Bank in it, but he kind of knew which way the wind was blowing, but he was not liked by management there, and if you read online, you'll know a couple of his colleagues didn't really like him either. But he went on to bigger and better things, and he did Beanie and Cecil, which I don't hate, but I don't love. But it made him a shitload more money than this did. So creators' rights,
Hey, that's good there. But then again, we have Beanie and Cecil's return to thank for John Kay. So I don't know.
Oh yeah,
but I think it gave us Billy West too. Am I correct?
That gave us Billy West.
Yeah,
yes.
So it gave us one good thing.
No, it's a net positive. It's fine. Well, my last thought on this, I forgot to say just how squash and stretch, like that's the principle of Looney Tunes, right? I mean, this is one of the squashy and stretchiest ones ever. Like Daffy can do and be anything like that. And like another of my favorite shots, I think this is maybe a perfect cartoon because any moment is a gifable moment. Like, I meant to say it earlier, when he's waiting for the mailman to go and he like stretches his eyes around the post.
That is so good.
Yeah, every second.
I guess I'll end with a final Ren and Stimpy comparison because again, a lot of Ren and Stimpy comes from this cartoon, and I feel like Duck Amuck Daffy looks relatively like the same character in every shot. Like there is a very specific style Daffy is drawn in. In this cartoon, it's very much like Ren and Stimpy, where it's like Daffy is a black duck. Draw a black duck character. As long as it looks kind of like Daffy, it's a scene in the cartoon. So he looks very different in every scene, but they're all recognizable as Daffy, and I think it lets him do more things. So let's move on to Duck Amuck. This is a 1953 cartoon directed by Chuck Jones, of course, the guy who lived forever until he died.
Yeah, he lasted quite a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this is my favorite of at least Warner, of Looney Tunes, of cartoons. This is my favorite Looney Tune. Like I love the deconstructionist element to it. I think honestly, Chuck his later ones got even more deconstruction-y, I think, to the point where I liked him less. But this one it's still funny while attacking the art form and letting you know what it is. And also this is This is Daffy. He's put upon, but he's not literally saying, I'm a greedy little miser. Like, so he's not the full dark Daffy that Chuck does.
He's sort of like, before he was the greedy miser, he was sort of like the hapless straight man, like in the cartoons where he would be with Porky in the parodies, where it's like bad things would happen to him, but he would just be very confident about himself, but still get crushed all the time and flattened.
I think Robin Hood Daffy was my second favorite of the Chuck ones, just because it has more jokes. Like, every joke makes me laugh so much, and I think repetition is key for him. And one of his best, like the yoiks and away slam, yoiks and away, one of my favorite things ever.
That is also like a newer meme I've seen where people it's a meme for
when
people
you go out and vote. Yeah.
Or like doing the same thing over and over with like the same results, basically. That's what that meme is used for.
When you go out and vote, like, that's why it's that. Yeah.
But yes, so directed by Chuck Jones, animation by Ken Harris, Ben Washam, and Lloyd Vaughn. And of course, the layouts and backgrounds, I believe, are they Maurice Noble? Because they look like his stuff.
What's interesting about this one is that, yes, Maurice did the layouts, and this was the only Warner cartoon where he actually painted the backgrounds, most of them at least. So.
Wow, okay. And I want to say up front that I think this was made at a time in history where the audience had seen enough cartoons and been aware of cartoons for long enough that Chuck Jones could start making a cartoon about the art of cartoons. Like, a cartoon is drawing on a painting, and we can put in whatever sound effects we want. And it's just like sort of thinking about the idea of like every piece of this thing was drawn by a person and thought went into it. And that is seen on the screen. Like, Daffy Duck is basically kind of explaining to you how a cartoon is made through his like various predicaments.
Fourth wall breaking is built into the Merry Melodies universe. Like, Screwy, ain't he? Like, that's been there from the beginning. So to have an entire cartoon be talking directly to either your creator or the audience, like, I don't know if a Looney Tune before it had done it that much.
It's actually more of a callback because a lot of silent animation was that. It was like Coco the Clown dealing with Max Fleischer, and there's a couple of Felixes with that.
It was sort of how like animation from that era was a sideshow or a magic trick where the character would jump out of the inkwell and dance around and stuff because they needed that.
The Talk
sort
Ink
of device.
Kid was explaining that to us. Yeah, no. That was Ian Jones Cordy, our friend of the show, talked about that's why the ending theme to OKKO is It's Only Magic. It's all about the magic trick of animation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like about this short, it's very clever in that up front, even though it's called Duck Amuck, it's presented as the cartoon Daffy thinks he's going to be in.
Yeah,
it has
the title card's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
When I was looking at title cards and like trying to figure out which one this was, I downloaded a bunch of these and it's like, which one is Duck Amuck? It's like, that Robin Hood looking one can't be Duck Amuck, but it says Duck Amuck. And I was like, oh yeah, they want to fool the audience just as they're fooling Daffy. Like, this is a Daffy Duck Three Musketeers parody. Mm-hmm. Daffy thinks he's in a Three Musketeers parody, but something is very wrong.
Stand back, musketeers! They shall sample my blade! Touché! Musketeers? My guard, my blade? Hey, psst! Whoever's in charge here! The scenery! Where's the scenery? Stand back, musketeers! They shall sample my blade. Okay, have it your way. Daffy Duck, he had a farm, E-I-A-I-O. And on this farm he had an igloo, E-I-E-I-O.
There's a lot of great scenes of Daffy being confident and then being deflated. Yeah. So the Three Musketeer background runs out into blankness. Then the animator paints in a farm scene, which turns into a snowy Alaskan scene with an igloo.
I got, maybe it's McKimson I'm thinking of, but when he's in his farmer outfit, he has kind of the fatter Daffy head, just a little bit. That it reminds me of those other ones.
Yeah, this whole first maybe minute and a half or whatever, up until he gets erased. This is all Ken Harris's animation. Just one single shot, really.
Wow. Oh wow, that's great.
And what I love about it is, like, he was given usually some of the most difficult stuff. This scene coming up where he's skiing and then he stalks off. It's just like done with such perfect weight, with someone really pissed off, going away. He's picking up his skis. All right, now, asshole, now we're doing this.
Yeah. Daffy really rolls with it. So yeah, he puts on the skis. He starts singing Jingle Bells. The background turns into a Hawaiian scene. So he picks up a ukulele, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to play Aloha Oi.
Yeah, it's a fun little dance to it too.
Yeah.
What's great is that was another thing Ken Harris was brilliant at, is like he holds this really I'm done with this shit face, but his feet are going a million miles a minute, like to the and it's perfect.
He's still an entertainer, no matter. I think he's still an entertainer, no matter how angry he is. He's like, I got to put on the show. People are watching me now.
Well, because he's only thinking of the audience this entire time. Like that's for the world that Daffy is in. He is on this screen in this little square. He's like, I have to entertain people, and you, who's ever in charge here, is making me bad at entertaining. What the fuck? Like, he's so mad about it. And then I also like that the backgrounds are great, but he's animated kind of independent of them. Like, it's there. So when he walks, it looks, they don't animate it like he's walking on sand or walking on any kind of different of a surface, no matter what the background is.
Daffy is pissed, and he eventually gets erased.
Buster, it may come as a complete surprise to you to find that this is an animated cartoon. And that in animated cartoons they have scenery. And in all the years All right, wise guy. Where am I?
So yes, another scene of Daffy being erased. Not quite so bad as the Rubberhead eraser.
No, but he still exists though. It doesn't kill him. He's just off of the screen. I mean, God, the acting on this by Blank too is just the greatest. He's so sick as this, and this also that they're able to. I think I read it in a Chuck Jones quote about this, that he's like, what if we tore down everything about Daffy? That he's still, that we get away his voice or we get away his entire body. He still is Daffy. Like, the core of him is still there no matter what. That is what a consistent character he is. That was a quote I read from the paraphrasing of Chuck Jones about this.
I read the same thing, and maybe it was something said in retrospect, but he wanted to make a cartoon where it's like the character is the most important thing. He can exist regardless of scenery or genre or setting or even other characters. Like a cartoon can just be about a character.
Yeah, that was a good point you made about like the snow not really being animated, because the whole point is he's in an increasingly artificial environment, just as this character existing.
He can't affect the background like you normally would. Like, in many of the snow cartoons, the one with Bugs and the little penguin, you'd see the footprints in the snow. Like, they put the work into that. So not doing it is a conscious choice there. Though as a little kid, it even bugged me then of like, well, how does an eraser get rid of paint? I didn't like that.
Yeah. It's all very
stupid,
metaphorical, but I understand.
Everything's made with asbestos. That's why.
Breathe it in, boys. So yes, he's drawn back onto the screen as I want to say like a Gene Autry style singer. I love the pose of Daffy with his like wide stance and like very skinny jeans.
Yes,
holding the guitar.
His body has never looked like that since. Like, it's so great. And the acting on the guitar, like, he treats it like a gun, but then he realizes it's not a gun. It's just sound effects.
And I don't know why, but the problem here is like not very clippable, where Daffy, the wrong sounds are coming out of the guitar and him. And it sort of reminded me of the cartoon that Chuck Jones would do like in 10 years called Now Hear This.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's artistically, it's very interesting, but I think it's a little too artsy-fartsy for me.
Yeah. No, that's when I fell off a little bit. We got one of those cartoons, the one about shapes with the voiceover, then like at the retrospective.
What's the one about
Dot in the Line?
Yeah, Dot in the Line. Yeah, I was going to say, man,
he didn't really direct that one. That was Maurice Noble's cartoon.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
That's why it bugged the shit out of Chuck, is because he got the Oscar, but it was for a film he really didn't have anything to do with.
Ah, that's good. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
As a kid, so this is why I love this one too, because as a kid, it was my favorite Looney Tune. I laughed the hardest at it. I have just a clear memory of when I saw Daffy make the little peep noise out of his mouth. I laughed harder than I ever did at anything as a kid. And I was like, I got to rewind this and see it again over and over. just he's hunched over. He's like so scared of what's going to come out of his mouth. He takes just a couple fingers off and then beep. God, we are
all gesturing wildly over here, like we did with the Ren and Stimpy episode.
This is Abe Levito's animation. He's not credited. Neither is Dick Thompson. They've been longtime assistants to Ken Harris, and they've just been promoted. And I guess they didn't do enough footage or something until a certain point to get credited. But
that's too bad.
This is Abe's. Yeah, this is one of Abe's earlier pictures.
So in this next clip, Daffy can finally scream in his own voice. By the way, this clip will start with a horrifying scream, just to let everyone know out there. And then he is eventually drawn as the famous screwball animal design creature.
I love this.
But let's hear this clip. That starts with a horrifying scream, by the way.
And I've never been so humiliated in all my life. Look, Mac, just what's going on around here? Let's get organized, How about some scenery? That's dandy. Ho, that's rich, I'll say. Now how about some color, stupid? Hey! Not me, you slop artist! Well, where's the rest of me? It isn't as though I haven't lived up to my contract, goodness knows. And goodness knows it isn't as though I haven't kept myself trim, goodness knows. I've done that. That's strange. All of a sudden, I don't quite feel like myself. Oh, I feel all right, and yet Hey! You know better than that!
Again, watch these cartoons. A lot of this is visual, but I remember this design was referenced in The Simpsons when It's Good That Bart did that thing. He turns the cat into that, basically, but the cat breathes fire.
Screwball Daffy was the next most I ever laughed because the drawing is silly on its own. It's funny as it is. It's just a funny... And if he had just immediately reacted to knowing his body was different, that would have been funny enough. But the time it takes of him, you just see, it makes you love Daffy even more, that he's just like comforting himself. It's like, no, I know I'm doing a good job. It's not me. It's not my fault.
He's trying to be
I stayed in shape. I'm under contract. I did what I was supposed to do.
He's trying to be reasonable while being this weird creature walking across the screen.
Yes.
And then the second he sees, I feel all right. And yet what? Like and just the extreme, to then get the kind of Daffy angry acting out of this chicken leg polka dotted monster.
Yep.
God damn it. Also, not me, you slop artist.
Slop artist is great.
I love
all the weird old timey expressions. Like this is a way to run a railroad, or thanks for the sour persimmons, pal.
Yeah.
I want to say those to people in real life. I just get
persimmons is something animator that thanks for the sour persimmons, cousin. That's something Benny Washam said around the studio, and they put it in. So something not ripped off from radio, just something.
So Daffy, after being turned into the horrifying beast, is drawn back in as a sailor, and he says,
"I've always a Donald Duck reference." I wonder,
maybe a sly one, a sly one. But he said he always wanted to do a sea epic. And this is like one of the many times, like I know all of these like army propaganda songs from old Looney Tunes, like "Shove Right Off for Home Again." Is that what they're singing?
Well, the song is from the 1937 Warner film "The Singing Marine."
Yeah,
I did not know that until doing research for this. I used to sing. I just knew this opening bar of the song very well as a kid because I love this cartoon that much.
The artist draws an island scene underneath Daffy, but of course Daffy's over the water. He falls down into the water and swims off to the distant island in the background, demands a close-up. At first, the camera just puts like a frame over everything but him. So he's just like a tiny speck in the background with a square around him.
This is a close-up?
And then he gets a little too close of a close-up.
That's another of my favorite line readings by Mel Blanc of this. A close-up, you jerk!
Yeah. I also like, this is a close-up?
Yeah. Well, and he's so like, to make him sound far away, he just makes him more high-pitched, which Daffy already has kind of a high-pitched voice. So I think that was the one, when we saw it in the theaters, Bob, that played the best in the audience, because on the giant screen, his little square, I think, was even funnier, that it took up that.
Oh, yeah. That's why these come alive. because they're screwing with the aspect ratio right there, right in front of your eyes.
I don't want to sound like a snob, but you haven't seen these until you see them in a theater.
No, it's absolutely not snobbish. That's absolutely 100% true.
And even out here in the Bay Area, where there's culture and old timey movie theaters, these don't play very often. Like I haven't seen anything like that since.
They don't. It's very strange with old cartoons and comedies. I know I've worked on the digital restorations of the Laurel and Hardy shorts, and my client Jeff Joseph, who owns the rights, he offers them as packages, and in New York City, places weren't picking up on it. And I'm like, seriously, like. Just like we usually get one regular customer out of the film forum, but it's like it's like, come on. And I gotta say that says to the longevity of these shorts is that I forget what movie it was. It was some baseball movie, but they had on the flyer added attraction baseball bugs, like they're being jokey about it, and the little kid saying, "Oh, I want to come see that for that." I want to see that for that. This kid, like, he's got to be like 6. So
that's a great cartoon too.
That's one of the best. Oh God,
it's like. It's like, so these cartoons are timeless. I'm just really sick of like this shit where like, oh, these are old. And it's like, no, if something is new to everyone, if they haven't seen it. So,
I mean, we were really lucky at the Castro Theater is one of the best like repertory theaters one of the best revival theaters in America. So we're really lucky in that regard. Plus at this screening of Chuck Jones things, I think the majority, if not all, came directly from like his personal collection of the reels. So
they're beautiful for the most part.
Pristine conditions. Like we were not watching these off of a Blu-ray broadcast on the TV. These were off the fucking film like that.
Yeah, that's why I collect it. It's just beautiful to behold, especially when before anyone digitally monkeys with it or Boomerang, the network has been stretching those things.
Oh God!
Someone needs to be murdered for that. Seriously, like
what a way to run a railroad, man.
Like, exactly. At least be shown the door. It's like you'll never work in this town again, Buster.
We only hope that they don't do that with The Simpsons when they put it on Disney Plus.
Oh my God, that would be a reason enough to not get the service on principle.
Yeah, I mean, we all celebrated when they added the 4x3 option to like the FXX app.
Took them long enough.
Well, they did that to Garfield and Friends for the 4K restoration. They put them in widescreen.
Yeah.
This is getting off topic, but didn't they like redraw title cards for that too?
Yes, they reanimated it in Flash very poorly.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did you guys, well, this is really off topic, but did you guys know they did that for Baywatch too recently?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What the fuck are they going to do with that? But those are real people.
Well, so Baywatch was filmed in widescreen. They filmed it in widescreen, but they didn't film it TV safe. So when they try to stretch it out, sometimes they have crew and stuff in it. So then they have to like monkey around with the framing even more. And then on top of that, they didn't. Baywatch was a giant show. So when it was broadcasting, they're like, we'll use whatever fucking song we want. Beach Boys every episode. And they had to cut all those songs too. There's a podcast version of Talking Simpsons, but for Baywatch, hosted by this wonderful young woman. And she has a whole video about how they butchered Baywatch for this HD restoration.
I gotta see that. Baywatch less worthy of preservation, but still.
Yeah.
That's one thing the Warner cartoons have very fortunately, as far as music rights, because they haven't owned most of these songs in years. In fact, they don't even own The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down anymore.
Really?
So,
man.
That's why with most of the productions nowadays, it's always Merrily We Roll Along.
Oh, wow.
They own that too. So they don't own The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down. But the arrangement right now is very convoluted. I don't know what it is, but if they can use it as is for a flat blanket fee, to cover the whole library just as it was recorded. So they're safe as far as that.
They're lucky they didn't lose the rights to Singing Marine, or else this cartoon would be ruined.
Oh, God. So back to Duck Amuck.
Yes.
The next scene is Daffy trying to reason with the artist, but the walls are caving in, the ceiling is caving in on him, which is a very claustrophobic scene of Daffy fighting just the sagging ceiling and the walls coming in to crush him.
Him putting that stick up, and then there's just great physics to that, like, inky blackness, especially how it folds in the stick. And
there's a great, you can really feel the physicality of that.
And when he's holding it, when he's stretched like planking basically, and holding it out, the way he kind of slips down too.
Yeah. Again, that's really great to watch in the theater because around that screen is nothing but blackness instead of just like your TV and the wall around it.
Yeah. That's why actually that works better in on a widescreen TV in a square aspect ratio, because the darkness works better there. And the loudest I laughed in this viewing of the cartoon was, let's get this picture started.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh,
just
the end?
speed of just smash to the end. Like
that got a huge laugh.
Yeah.
So I think I have that in this clip. So Daffy basically just gets frustrated and tears up all the darkness and tries to reason with the animator.
All right, let's get this picture started. No! Listen, pal, let's discuss this thing sanely, huh? Look, I tell you what, you go your way, and I'll go mine. Live and let live, right? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be no further delays, so I shall attempt to entertain you in my own inimitable fashion.
Again, they are playing off audience expectations because you see the end, but then you hear like bump, 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 like how every cartoon ends, like with a big sting like that.
That's so great. But the end sign is not "that's all, folks," so you know it's not the real one, too.
This whole bit, when it starts with him coming back, thanks for the Sour Persimmons, and to when he's fighting with himself, this is all Benny Washam's animation. And this actually, according to Benny himself back in the day, this caused the only fight he ever had with Chuck over this.
Oh, really?
It's a long piece. And when they ran it in pencil test with no sound, Chuck was saying, this isn't working. You've got to do it over.
Wow.
And he's fighting with, no, it's going to work. We got to run it with sound. So they actually they told the projectionist run the piece of sound with this, and it worked. and then Chuck says to him, "Don't think because you were right once, you will always be right."
Ooh,
yeah,
damn.
It's a great. I didn't pull a clip from the scene, but basically Daffy does a little soft shoe routine, and the frame of the film slips, so half of him is on the top and half is on the bottom, and those two Daffys argue with each other until
cloned himself.
Yeah, until the animator erases one of them as Daffy's about to punch him in the face.
Which I guess that means the original Daffy is dead.
If you wasn't me, I'd sock you right in the puss. That's, oh my God.
Another use of puss.
Don't let that stop you, Jack.
Oh my God.
I like how Gruffy's being without being clever, like Jack.
All to himself. Like he's so easily. I mean, Daffy has such a short fuse. He's already set off. And that Daffy looking down at the audience and saying, "Now everyone look, I'm just gonna dance. You don't need the background. We're not doing a regular cartoon. I'll just do a dance routine." That really played great in the Castro too. Like
it did.
Because he's looking down at you. If he's on your TV screen, he's probably level with you. But if he's on the movie theater screen, he has reason to be looking down at you in a friendly manner. Also, I think in the grieving steps, now he's in the bargaining phase. He's just like, "Look, let's you live and let live. Just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. We got it." Okay.
Now he's like a cartoon from like 25 years earlier where he's just going to dance and sing a song. But up next, he is drawn into a plane. And I love the pacing of this gag where the camera pans over to nothing, a mountain is painted over nothing, and then it pans over to more nothing, and you hear the crash. So I love the three pans over. It really sells the gag. Where you don't have to see Daffy crash. You just hear it and it's enough.
Well, and it's even funnier that he's going to be injured so much in just a few seconds that it's actually funnier that he is untouched. He's like, what happened? He has the look of like, what happened to the rest of my plane? Like, he's fine. He doesn't understand what happened. That's makes it even better.
So Daffy parachutes out for the final gag of this cartoon. The parachute is drawn into an anvil. Lots of anvils in these cartoons because all the people who wrote and drew these grew up on a farm in like 1903. So anvils were common things around the house.
That's why I liked in the Animaniacs that they just made anvils a thing, even though there was no, you'd never see an anvil in real life.
There's probably more anvils in a single Tiny Toon or Animaniacs, though, in all the old Warner cartoons put together.
They really underlined the anvils. Like, it was Daffy singing the 1812 Overture or whatever, or sorry, Plucky, and all the anvils falling on him. I think that was one of the cartoons.
That's right, yeah. I think that was a TMS one.
I think so,
it looked
too.
real good.
It was a real good looking one.
Also, I love Blank's scream of Geronimo!
You know, we can't say that anymore in the comics.
That's too well.
I guess there are some implications.
American name.
I get it, but that's just it's a person's proper name. It's
a name.
Oh well. Yeah.
But Daffy is seen on the ground. I love the weird, just very Maurice Noble, like squiggly line background into nothingness.
Yes, yeah.
And he's just banging an anvil, and I don't know what he's saying.
He's singing the Village Smithy.
Yes,
okay.
I did look that one up too. Yeah,
I couldn't make it out because he's banging an anvil. It's making a lot of noise.
Why he's going like
Yeah.
He's
so fucked up.
So he's singing the Village Smithy. Is that a song?
Yeah,
It's
it's just under the spreading chestnut tree, the Village Smithy stands.
Okay.
It's long.
And then he descends into gibberish.
Yeah. And then the anvil is erased and a shell is drawn in. And of course, everyone who is watching this just fought in a giant war, and they know you shouldn't hit a shell with a hammer. You drop those on people.
I also love the Warner clang of an anvil. It's like that Foley is beautiful to me.
Oh god.
And then a door is drawn over the exploded Daffy. It's closed with the
As
pencil.
he demands to know who's responsible for this.
And in this next scene, we see who's responsible.
All right, enough is enough. This is the final, the very, very last straw. Who is responsible for this? I demand that you show yourself. Who are you? Huh?
Am I a stinker?
So Bugs Bunny is the dark, uncaring god of this universe.
A monster, true monster. Yes.
They didn't want this cartoon to end this way. Eddie Selzer, producer, he said, "Oh, for Christ's sakes, he's a major star. You're not using him in such a limited way." And I think they just ended up doing it without his consent because that's how the studios rolled there. They said, he said he doesn't want you to do this. And, they just did it anyway.
Just ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah, right. And, it came at a good point for them because they had already made the first two rabbit seasoning cartoons. It couldn't be someone else. And it couldn't be Fudd or something because he's not smart enough. And unfortunately they did when they remade it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Rabbit Rampage. So I know I watched it a billion times. I have no memories of this. I have every memory of Duck Amuck, but I don't remember Rabbit Rampage, where Bugs Bunny is in the Daffy role, but Elmer Fudd is revealed at the end to be the animator.
I only remember the reveal. I don't remember much of it either.
It doesn't work. It's just...
Well, because Bugs gets the last laugh. Him being a victim of circumstance like that doesn't fit for a full cartoon, I don't think. That's not what Bugs is for.
And to reel it to your wheelhouse of video games, it was also adapted into a very bad SNES game.
Yes, Rabbit Rampage.
A bad SNES game with very nice looking sprites, I got to say. Those were beautiful. Yeah.
It's a demo. It's not a...
So this twist ending as a kid made me gasp. Like, I love it. I think it is one of the... Ain't I Stinker is like one of the best outros, I think, in all of the Looney Tunes. But... Then when they tried to top it, I feel like they made it Elmer to surprise you, because if you were seeing Rabbit Rampage and were thinking, oh, this is like Duck Amuck, so you're probably thinking the whole time, Daffy's getting his revenge on Bugs for fucking with him in the last tune. So by making it Elmer, you're surprised. It maintains the element of surprise. That's maybe that's why they did it.
I think they just were just late. They just wanted to get footage out.
Thankfully there was no third version of this with Elmer and like somebody else doing the animation.
He's tortured enough as it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to. The ending, the idea that Bugs had been doing this the whole time, I just loved it so much as a kid. There's no tease that it was him until this point. You also, I guess, do have to remember the rabbit seasoning cartoons to be like, oh yeah, that's why he'd do it. These guys hate each other. And also, you mentioned the video games too. There was a good, though short, video game adaptation of this.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
I almost forgot to mention that. Have any of you played it? I haven't.
I did a little bit. Not.
I saw some of the long plays, but I didn't. It looked nice.
There's too many. Well, the problem is it's so gag focused that it works as a recreation of Duck Amuck in video game form, doing things only a DS can do. The problem is that there's not enough gags to really stretch it over like the expected, 8 hours a game should give you of gameplay for its retail price, which that's just the wrong way to look at gaming, but that kind of hurt its commercial potential. It was made by Way Forward, who those guys are defined by working too hard on a licensed game and making something that's better than it deserves to be.
If it would have come out like 10 years later when you could download it for $10 instead of buying it for $30 and spending 2 hours with it, I think people would have liked it more. But at best, it was just like a fun like tech demo-y kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was one of the rare games that told you to like close your DS and press buttons, which... if I recall correctly from interviews at the time, they had to get special permission from Nintendo to do that because normally your DS isn't supposed to do that. Like, it was a really clever idea, too clever by half, way better than a Looney Tunes game deserved based on most of the shit Looney Tunes games.
It's probably the best Looney Tunes game in terms of concept, for sure.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
But we've been talking for a long time about Looney Tunes cartoons.
Yes, we
Do
have.
you have any final thoughts on either of these cartoons and or Daffy Duck before we have you do some of your plugs?
Basically, just the same as I said before, just perfection. So many lines, so many classic lines, great soundtrack, great voice work by Mel. One man doing it, all the screaming at himself. Just great direction. It's definitely the two sides of the same pole with Clampett on one end and Jones on the other. Just the apex, and it's just this one's influenced so many too. This awareness of being a cartoon character. It's sort of further evolution of Tex Avery's, who was just doing it for a laugh, but now they're doing it as a character introspective character study as far as that. But
I forgot to mention the last episode of Clerks is also the animated series, except way more gay jokes than in this.
Well, gay people are funny.
Well. If you didn't have those, where would a third of all cartoon jokes be?
That's true. But thanks for joining us, Thad. Again, to everybody out there, check out these cartoons. I mean, if you are maybe a little bit younger than us, you might have missed a lot of these because we grew up in the perfect time period where they were always available. But now you kind of have to search them out and buy the DVDs or the Blu-ray or buy them a la carte on Amazon or Google or whatever. But they're all available, and you can find directors that you like and stick with their cartoons, or you can, branch around based on the characters you like. But there are so many Warner Brothers cartoons, and now they're mostly all available except for the censored ones. But those are even more available because they don't want you to see them.
Yep.
But Thad, you are a special guest, and thanks for coming back.
No problem.
Please promote your stuff. You're so busy. I see you working on all kinds of new things.
I work myself usually on. I have my own company, Siniste Restoration. I'm doing all sorts of digital restoration of old films. Mostly old movies, shorts, cartoons. Do a little bit of localization for Disney comics. If you, like I said, the Fantagraphics Disney Masters line, you can find my work and many other devotees to the Disney Duck and Mice universes. And that's about it. And I also, of course, wrote Sick Little Monkeys, the unauthorized Ren and Stimpy story, which people are now asking me, you going to revise it again? I don't know why, but...
You got about 30 more pages of information to put in there, maybe.
Maybe.
So thanks again to Thad Komorowski. Again, he does great work. He's a great guest, and his book, Sick Little Monkeys, I've read, I think, 3 times. I'll possibly read it a 4th time when I wanted to learn more about Ren and Stimpy again. And there might be another Ren and Stimpy episode in the future. Who knows? And he might be on it. So
Thad taught me so much about these cartoons that I thought I knew inside and out just from looking at them, like all the credits and inside and out. I could have just done another hour of me describing a half memory of a Looney Tune and then him telling me the name of it.
Here's the director. Here's the artist who actually drew that scene. Here's the background artist. Yes, that is a well of knowledge, and we thank him for being on the show. But if you want to help us, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and for the low price of $5 per month, you'll get access to a wealth of podcasts, including all of our limited miniseries like Talking of the Hill, our newest one, an entire first season exploration of all 13 episodes of the first season of King of the Hill. That's available to you for $5 a month, including all of the other paywalled stuff like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, and too many other podcasts to mention like interviews, end of season wrap-ups, and so on. We also have a $10 a month premium podcast for our people with deep pockets. Henry, what is that and what goes on with that level?
For those premium subscribers, they get access to our monthly What a Cartoon Movie. If you liked us talking on What a Cartoon about a specific episode of a cartoon for so long, you'd love hearing us talking even longer about a different animated feature film once a month. In May, we did Aladdin, the 1992 Disney Renaissance classic, and in June, we've got another cool one coming. Over 6 months, over 22 hours of podcasting greatness, me and Bob talking about tons of cartoon history. You'll only get it if you are at the $10 and up level. We make it worth your while at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
So as for me, I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast every Monday and occasionally Friday. Go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine and sign up for it and subscribe and maybe like it on the service of your choice. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. Whenever I have new thoughts about comic books, video games, politics, and also whenever new things go live on the Patreon, I am sure to tweet about it. So please follow me there to stay informed. HENEREYG.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for the Thundar the Barbarian episode, Secret of the Black Pearl, and we will see you then.
The merry-go-round broke down and made the darndest sound. The lights went low, we both said, oh, when the merry-go-round went. Oh, what fun, a wonderful time, finding love for only a dime. The merry-go-round broke down, but you don't see me frown. Things turned out fine, and now she's mine, 'cause the merry-go-round went. The merry-go-round broke down.
A trapdoor, no doubt. Very ingenious. The Claycy is too smart for a trick like that. I shall ring the bell from here. Was that trip really necessary?